Call the Select Board meeting for Tuesday, February 18th, 2025 to order, and note that we will be going into executive session, returning no sooner than 6 p.m. I get a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to enter an executive session for item A pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, excuse me, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining for all town unions and non-union personnel, and the chair has determined that open session will have a detrimental effect on the town's bargaining position.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Pete?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, 4-0. Thank you all for being here. I'd like to call the Select Board meeting for Tuesday, February 18th, 2025, open session back to order. We were in executive session prior to our open session, and we took no action. Select Board Member McCaskill is remote tonight, so that's the MM up there. And if you'd all like to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next on the agenda is staff comments and announcements. Do we have any staff in the room? Okay, other than myself. I will begin by saying congratulations to the Grateful Mug. They got their, they passed through the planning board, and I think this is just a testament to how well our town and our community is working together to just create a better environment for all. So congratulations to the Grateful Mug. From there, we'll move to the weekly briefing. Joe?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members, and everyone here. Thank you for that. So the latest update, the weekly briefing look ahead for Phase 3 sewer extension. Look ahead from February 17th through February 28th. Again, the One East contract is not underway yet, so the work still remains in the 2W contract, and they are still within Chestnut Lane, Elm Drive, and Martha Eaton Court. 3-week look ahead then get to March 3rd through the 7th. And they expect to be clearing from Elm Drive and focusing more on Chestnut Lane and Martha Eaton Court easement. That's on pump station work, and then Martha Eaton Court. And that's it for now for the weekly briefing.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Moving on to public comments and announcements. Anybody from the public?
Matt Sutphin, Harwich. I'm here to read a letter that, into the record that I copied to all of you. I read the agenda for the CPC and clicked on the details for the tech school project contemplated on the Main Street bogs. And the more I looked at it, the more it just didn't make sense to me. So I'm here tonight to tell you why I don't think it makes sense. The letter you received from me, I'd like to read. Dear board members, the CPC will soon vote on the merits of providing $1 million to further the Main Street Bog project. The germ for this project was one person who brought his thought to the tech school administrator. The tech school administrator brought it onto the town. It was ill-conceived. Aside from all the environmental issues to contend with, as well as the questionable future access to construction funds by the state, given our political climate, there is also the need to consider the future operating costs, as John Chory informed the board last week. We do not need to run two facilities. I encourage the Select Board to require an alternative analysis before rushing headlong into development of a site that will have runoff concerns, animal husbandry concerns, unanticipated expenses, and far too much environmental degradation. This is, after all, supposed to be a campus dedicated to environmental schooling. in addition to the existing $120 million tech campus, should be able to be useful for those interested in the contemplated curricula. It should be remembered that the Main Street bogs were purchased with land bank funds. I recall being a voter. I think everybody expected it to be open land. And now here we are, 25 years later, deciding whether or not we should build on it. So I ask you to go back into history a little bit, consider what the voters voted for, what money they parted for at that time, and respect it. I would add that those tax dollars, were they to be spent, would activate more nitrogen loading in Herring River, and there's a lot of money on the table to deal with nitrogen loading. This property is a headwater to the Thatcher Bogs, which is a headwater to Herring River. Makes sense to build something like this on high land, away from estuaries, away from wetlands. Wouldn't make sense to me, but it would make more sense, put it that way, to consider the construction somewhere other than close to wetlands. So with that, I would also say one thing that I added on here. The proposal was probably thought of in a way, in a good way perhaps, that it would provide some farming education for people at the tech school. But I say to you as a farmer, very optimistic to think going forward another generation or two that the farms on Cape Cod will look as they do today. They won't. They'll be inherited, families will split, property will get sold. There will be a few farms left, I sure hope so, but as a practical matter, schooling kids to be farmers on Cape Cod is pie in the sky. So I encourage you to think of this project differently than you may have thought of it to date, and consider the cost benefit of doing what's necessary if that curricula is to be fully developed. Consider doing it on the property, on the existing tech property, where the parking areas already exist, the lighting already exists, everything already exists. Just plug in a couple more, another building. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Matt. Anybody else?
Good evening, John Carey, redoing the West Harwich Schoolhouse. I want to announce tonight that I've submitted an offer to the West Harwich Baptist Church, and Pastor Cobb is here tonight to purchase it. I can move that offer to anyone, but I'm basically putting myself out here to offer my assistance to preserve the building. I think the town meeting vote was pretty clear. The town wants the building saved. You guys issued an RFP with the hope of saving it. I think some things have happened since then, and I think everyone that lives in Harwich wants this building saved. The only person that doesn't want to save the building lives in Yarmouth. I think it's time that this town steps up and fights to save this building. That's all I got. So
Thank
I
you.
hope you guys will do the right thing.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment?
And I hope other people will
It's on the agenda.
put an RFP out or offer to save this building too, because there's
Thank
other people interested. Thank you.
Good evening, Select Board. Thank you. Patrick Otten, East Harwich. Two comments. One, this Thursday, the Board of Health agenda, Thursday, February 20th, on the agenda will be a request that the town not use second-generation anticoagulant rodenticides. SCARs, if you want to pronounce it as the acronym, are highly toxic. They are prevented from public sale, but still available for licensed applicators. However, SCARs are highly toxic Even though the rodent that they killed is dead or dying, they are still toxic to whatever consumes that dead body or dying body. So whether it be a snake, your cat, your dog, a coyote, a wolf, a fox, they too, or a hawk or an owl, they too die. So there is before even the House of Massachusetts, a bill being submitted to restrict eschars from public use. So I'm going before the Board of Health this coming Thursday to ask them that they not use eschars on town property as a preliminary step. So, okay. So I hope anyone and everyone that wishes can attend and support this effort. Secondly, last May town meeting, the issue of electronic voting came up, and I'm looking for an update on that. It was supposed to be, in fall, winter, beginning of the year. But anyways, I'm looking for an update on the use of electronic voting for town meeting. They're efficient, they're private, and they're accurate. 70 other towns in Massachusetts uses electronic votings. Our neighbors use electronic votings. All our neighbors are in favor of it. The town moderator's in favor of using electronic voting. So I'm looking for an update that we can pursue and continue having this objective met. All right, so thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Anybody else, public comment? Excellent. So we'll move to the consent agenda and the approval of the Select Board meeting minutes from February 3rd, 2025. Can I get a motion?
So move.
Seconded, but I wasn't at that.
We'll wait for Dawn.
Yeah. Does anyone have any changes? Maybe ask Michael.
Pete, do you have any changes you want to make on that?
None.
Michael, do you have any changes on that?
No, I'm all set.
Okay. Somebody could go bang
Michael-
on the door and get Dawn.
Michael can second it.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can-
why don't
Michael, you wanna
second?
second?
Michael, you want to second that?
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. No discussion. Pete?
Aye.
Julie?
Abstain.
Michael?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. 301. And now with the board's approval, which I've gotten consensus of 2, I would like to take new business A out of order so we can let one of our town employees leave sooner rather than later. So Emily, if you'd like to come up to the podium, thank you.
Good evening, Emily Mitchell, Town Clerk, and thank you very much. I will do my best to be brief. I know you have a lengthy agenda ahead. I'm here tonight to give you a few updates on the status of the elected charter commission. I'll start with just kind of an introduction where the Massachusetts State Constitution and state general laws allow voters to petition for the creation of an elected charter commission which would review and recommend amendments to the town's charter. They have a fairly heavy lift to initiate this process. The law requires proponents to gather signatures from registered Harwich voters, and their number that they have to hit is 15% of the number of registered voters as of the most recent state election. So for our purposes, that was the 2024 state election in November. At that time, we had 12,118 registered voters. So to satisfy the 15% threshold, the petitioners had to gather signatures from 1,818 registered Harwich voters. The petitioners have been circulating petitions and filing on a periodic basis, and they notified us last Monday, February 10th, that their filing was complete. In the end, we were able to certify 1,869 valid signatures. So I'm here tonight first and foremost to notify you. The statute requires me to give you formal notice that the petitioners have satisfied the requirement. They gathered enough signatures and they gathered them on the appropriate, in appropriate form to move forward. So that was the first step for you tonight. The next step is yours as the select board. The statute calls for you, within 30 days of my notice, to place both the Office of Charter Commission and a ballot question about establishing a charter commission on the next regular town election. So for our purposes, that's the May 20th, 2025 annual town election. I've provided you with sample motions and sample language if you wanted to act tonight. You certainly don't have to act tonight. Again, the statute establishes this 30-day window for you to do so. I don't know if you have any questions on that part of the process, or if you want me to go into any more detail about what the Charter Commission looks like for candidates and voters in May, or after that, if it is supported on the ballot.
Thank you, Emily. I'll go to the board. Don?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just to put it out in the public, what happens if the board does not act after the 30 days?
So the statute says that the board shall place it. If the board does not place the question within 30 days, it will appear on the ballot anyways. There's some language about 60 days and 90 days that I go over in my memo, but to simplify, essentially, with or without your action, the office and the ballot question will appear on the ballot.
Pete? Anything?
No questions.
Julie?
I
Anything?
don't have any. No.
Michael?
No questions.
Thank you. I have none.
Okay. Would you like me to go into the overview, or would you like to save that for another time?
What does the board feel? Is this something we want to move on tonight, tonight, or is this something we want to wait?
I'd like to hear this.
Don?
It's going to happen with or without us.
Personally, I'd like to move this forward today.
Mr. Chair,
Thank you, Pete. I feel it coming.
I move to place the Office of Charter Commission with 9 members to be elected on the May 2025 annual town election ballot.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Michael?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Pete?
Aye.
I'm an aye. 5-0. Joe?
Mr. Chair, I move to place the following ballot question on the May 2025, I don't know why I can't say that, annual town election ballot. Shall the commission be elected to revise the charter of the town of Harwich? Yes or no?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Pete?
None.
Don?
None.
Julie?
Nothing.
Michael?
Aye.
Okay, all in favor? Michael's an aye. Julie?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Pete?
Aye.
I'm an aye. 5-0, Joe.
Do you want me to do any of the overview, or do you want to save that part?
I think we can save that part.
Okay, sounds great.
Suspense.
Just
Yeah.
to give the high point, so voters should expect to see that office that you just placed and the ballot question. The way it kind of works is if the ballot question passes, the 9 candidates for office who get that most votes are elected. If the ballot question fails, even if those candidates got every vote in the town, there would be no charter commission, no one would be elected. So voters consider both in May, pursuant to your action just a moment ago.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emily. Have a great night.
You're welcome to stay if you'd like.
Appreciate the invitation.
Okay, we're going to back up, and we'll go to joint meeting with Select Board and FinCom. Unfortunately, there was an error in a posting with the Finance Committee, so this will not be a joint meeting, but we will move on and proceed as scheduled. Fiscal year 2026 operating budget deep dive with the following departments, and we'll have the police up first. So Chief Considine, if you wouldn't mind. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening.
When's the polar plunge again?
March 15th.
All right, just a plug for the polar plunge. Make sure there's a lot of ambulances available,
Too bad it wasn't tonight.
for me at least. Okay,
So,
take it away.
yeah, not sure if we want to do this like the Saturday version of just a quick snapshot of where we were, where we are. That might help answer some questions the typical questions that come up from year to year.
I'm going to leave it to you to take it the way you feel best.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Chief.
So last year in March, we were before you on a Saturday with FinCom. At that time, Chief Gilmet and I were in front of you talking about a staffing crisis was the exact terminology. At that time, we were down 12 officers of 35 strength sworn department. We were down 12. We mentioned that at that time, we were hiring 4 officers who were gonna be ready for the road, affecting the schedule next October, which happy to report, 3 out of those 4 are. We lost 1 in probation. That's the good news on that. We also talked about how in FY '24, we were $134,000 in the red on overtime. That has been typical over the years. We have been typically in the red since I've been in administration for various reasons that we've all discussed over the years. Not the biggest one to mention is just the staffing crisis that we continue to have. And this is across every facet of jobs everywhere, but particularly police. So over the years, we've been fortunate enough to carry over that overtime with salaries that we have not used. So we never had to come back and ask for more overtime. Fast forward to tonight, currently, we have 4 vacancies in the police department. One of those is in the academy, just started the Falmouth Academy last week. That's a 22-week academy. So we won't realize that position again for quite a while. Over this year, we also had 1 officer on admin leave, and we had last year and continue this year to have 3 officers out on long-term injured on duty status.
You said 3? 3?
Yeah. So currently, with the 4 vacancies and all those I mentioned, we went from 12 to 8. So I think over the year, to me, that's a win. Happy to report that with those 4 vacancies, with the 1 in the academy right now, last week, we did interviews for patrol for the other 3. And I feel we have 3 outstanding candidates that have already signed the conditional offers. So with those 3, over the next year and a half, the other trouble we're having is academies. We're at the whim of an academy when an academy starts, and they're getting filled up quickly. So when we finally do realize those 3, which will be after FY '26, we will finally, hopefully with no more vacancies, be as close to full strength than we have been in a good 9 years. One factor that also hurt us this summer was we had unexpected long-term medical duration issues over the 3 or 4 months during the summer from 2 members of the dispatch department. That's a killer on overtime. So just that alone, in dispatch, we needed to fill overtime for 19 to 21 shifts in a 7-day pay period for 3 to 4 months. 1 person goes out, there's 5 people in the room, 1 person goes out, it's an automatic fill. And remember, our overtime not only fills officers, it fills non-sworn positions and dispatch. So that is always our biggest concern, and I know that's always the question that comes up, is overtime. I can answer any other questions. We remained steady on salaries and wages and expense lines per instructions. The minor increases are just contractual and for both lines. And then we also have, our department also had EOS requests as well, which I know we can get into.
All right, thank you, Chief, and thanks for all you do. So we'll start with the
Mr.
questions.
Chairman,
Yeah,
if I could, just to
Please.
add, excuse me, in every instance of the first, I believe it's 5 departments that you're going to hear from, These are departments that have a request for enhancement of services, so what you'll see in the packet is an infographic that just gives a basic overview of the department, any materials such as what Chief Considine's gone over with the memo, as well as their budget detail. And that's also meant to help the board in your quote deep dive of police, fire, and public works. Having said that, I don't know that we, in administration, added the fire department. Do you have information tonight, Chief?
Not for the budget hearing, no. I mean,
So we can add that for a future meeting, but for the enhancement of services, you'll see those three elements for the departments with enhancements.
Excellent.
Their budget detail, their infographic, and their detail request.
All right, thank you. So I'll go to the board to ask any questions they have regarding what you just presented, then we'll get into your enhancement of services. Julie?
So if I followed, thank you.
Yeah.
If I followed your numbers, and you said for the first time in 9 years, you'll be close to full strength after the other 3 who just signed on go to the academy. But you'll still be down how many bodies at that point?
Well, we don't know what's gonna happen with those long-term IOD status.
Okay, okay. So you can't really answer that question. Okay. That's really all I have right now.
So I'm going to ask just on, to piggyback on Julie's question, do you consider leave, injured officers, full staffing in terms of?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Those IOD, when we're down this much, those IOD status is an automatic fill. So we're losing them on the shift, and one of those is a patrol sergeant. And with 4 road patrol sergeants, that's a huge hit. And an increase in overtime based on that rank being a sergeant.
Thank you. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, is going to be to you, but it's also to everyone else who's going to be presenting tonight for an enhancement of services. It's really a two-parter. The first part is to have a short discussion about what the impact is of the enhancement. What's it going to do? What's it going to alleviate? What do you see as it helping out in terms of your service level? And the second part you can't answer because we had already asked as part of our goals and objectives to make sure that any enhancement of services comes with a corresponding offset somewhere. It doesn't have to be in your department, but we'd have to first justify for that second part of the process to occur, to see if there was any way that we could pull the money from some other endeavor. But it's supposed to be revenue neutral. But in that spirit, I'm eventually, after Pete gets asked what he wants to, I'd like to hear, because this is just a couple of bullet points, I'd like to hear what it is that entails and why it is that you need it.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thanks, Don. Pete?
Chief, appreciate you being here tonight. A couple quick questions. One, curious, what academies, what training academies do you have at your disposal?
Really, Falmouth is a new one. Unfortunately, they're only running 1 a year now. This is the very first class. They built a brand-new, beautiful building. It's 1 a year. I believe because it's on Cape Cod, they just couldn't do it in the summertime. So that's one academy. That's a help. 2 would be better. The other academy is Plymouth Academy, where most of us went to the police academy. They do twice a year. We know when they start that year, and that's a tremendous help. The other one is Randolph, which is doable. It's a commute. It's a little stretch for the recruit as far as timing with morning and night. Randolph's possible. The others in the state, unless we've never done it, put them up, it's impossible to commute.
Okay. Yep. Randolph's not too bad, if I recall.
Randolph's not bad.
And secondly, and I don't know if this is to you or the town administrator, but are those long-term IODs compensated through our budget, or is that insurance coverage?
All through our budget. Although we work with the insurance company to manage all of that, but financially, it comes down, to us.
There's no reimbursement from insurance to the town?
I wouldn't say that. I'll follow up on that later.
Okay.
Thank you.
Fair enough, thank you.
We don't see it as that.
Sure.
Phil? Michael?
I have no questions that haven't been asked. Thank you, Chief, for being here.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, and I don't have anything to add, so if you want to take us into your enhancement of service request.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Just a quick opening with the enhancement of services request, and Don, you stole my thunder a little bit. I completely understand where we are with this. Hence, I couldn't find the money that's being requested in my salary wages to make this work. It couldn't do it. So I fully understand where the town is in trying to find that money as well. Fully understand that. So with the enhancement of services, you should have a memo that corresponds with that. Chief Gilmet and I have been thinking about this for many, many years, and I'll get into the reasonings why. We chose not to pursue it at that time because we were down so many. How can we ask for an additional body of our request if we're having trouble filling all of them? So taking over in July, I felt that we're making tremendous progress to fill the department, and this is probably the best time to at least have the conversation and have that request. Just give me one moment. Tab here. So, the request would be, and this is a tad bit complicated, but we would like to add a 5th road sergeant. So right now, we have 4 sergeants that cover shifts on the road. And we have 1 sergeant who is a detective sergeant, does not work the road, he runs the detective division. So that's a total of 5 sergeants. The ask is to add an additional road sergeant, so that will be 5 patrol sergeants to the ranks. So that would be taking an officer, promoting them to sergeant, and then obviously we would have to backfill that officer position. Impact the salary and wages for a new officer and a promoted sergeant, $75,840.32. The impact to expense line for the new officer and the promoted sergeant is $22,280 for a total of $98,120.32. So the natural question is why? Why do we need a 5th road sergeant? We've said it many, many times at these hearings and in other presentations that we've had. The first-line patrol supervisor in any police department is the single most important position in the police department. It's more important than the chief. It's more important than anybody else. That sergeant, those officers who get promoted that wear the chevrons on their sleeves, they get paid more. They get paid more for a reason. They're out there 24 hours, 7 days a week, monitoring shift, supervising the officers, going to every call, especially critical calls. And at 2 a.m., they're the ones making the decisions that could impact not only the police department, either in a favorable way or not a good way, but also the town. When we do not have a sergeant on shift, that shift is covered by what we call an officer in charge. The officer in charge is a senior officer who has specialized training that will come into work and just figure out, you're in charge today. Sergeant took the day off or is on IOD or is sick or whatever. That officer in charge is the supervisor for the day. They get a little stipend for the day. They make the difficult decisions. The next day, they're back working with their peers. I never thought it was a good scenario, and I've been in that scenario as an OIC before a sergeant. One day, you're a peer, you're in that union,
Then you come to work and you're an officer in charge and you're in charge of that shift for the day. It's a great responsibility that I think should only come down to a sergeant that we promote. Although our OICs do a tremendous, tremendous job, it's a very difficult situation for them to be in. This allows for a more consistent supervision of police personnel. It promotes a greater availability of a patrol supervisor to citizens for inquiries, complaints, or concerns. And first and foremost, liability to the town. Again, that sergeant is out there at night when we're all asleep, making those tough decisions and making those tough calls and answering questions for their officers. Again, this is the most crucial role in any police organization. They have the most direct contact with their officers. They act as mentors and culture influencers. They are in charge of explaining and translating policy and procedures on the ground as things occur. So it's a tremendous, tremendous responsibility. By having 5 road sergeants covering shifts, there'd be approximately only 2 shifts not covered. So the high majority of shifts will be covered by sergeants. The final other issue that I've seen over the last year or 2 in particular is we have a very young department. We talked about 12 vacancies, now down to 8. That clearly tells us that our department is extremely young. They're still learning. They're struggling to find qualified OICs, officer in charge officers. This is not a position where I just say, you're it today, go out there and run a shift. It can't happen. I won't let that happen. With our young department and our young force, we have right now, I believe, 3 qualified OICs. We're getting down to having to make a tough decision of what we're going to do next. So I've compared other communities. Dennis has 6 road sergeants. That's the closest comparison in population and size of department that I could find. And I believe for the town, for all the mentioned things that I brought up, it's crucial for all of us.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
So I'll go to the board. Does anyone want to start? Don?
Thanks for the presentation. I do understand the sergeant part, because that's pretty much the biggest problem for most police forces. When they have a reduction in force, they find morale and judgment it goes along with that. I'm going to go in the other direction, though. How did you predicate the impact here? Is this step 1, step 5?
So the impact on the officer position, we usually don't go low. We usually look at probably step 2, hoping that if somebody comes in with some experience, at least we can cover that. Sergeant, you're starting at step 1, sergeant. So that's where that comes from.
Okay, the reason I ask that is because ancillary costs of benefits don't get covered by Prop 2.5. I mean, because the insurance is going to be up much more than 2.5% in a given year, and other things that go into the mix for recruiting. I'm not entirely, if you were to pilfer somebody, you wouldn't start them at step 1.
Correct.
So I guess my point is that that's a kind of risky proposition to budget for step 1 for the sergeant without knowing for a fact that you could actually acquire a newbie for that position.
So the sergeant, we know what that is. It's going from probably close to those that take the sergeant's test are probably close to a top step. So you're looking at, between officer and sergeant, roughly $20,000 difference, and then just add starting base on the officer. But yes, Don, I agree with you that in our expense number there at 22 plus, we don't do the insurance part. I mean, that's just academy, that's initial issue outfit, that's the training, what have you.
But again, we wind up with the retirement fund, insurance for healthcare. So pretty much from my own experience going back years and doing budgeting for the government in general, it started off like 20-25%, but it's up to almost 40% in a lot of organizations.
Agreed.
Is that all?
Yep.
Thank you. Julie?
I think I'm asking, I think, an obvious question. The answer is no. There's no impact to your overtime. Doesn't go on any overtime, does it?
This would have a little impact on the overtime. It would assist in, if we were full strength.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. No, I mean, I can see the importance of the position, so hopefully we can figure it out.
Michael?
Chief, thank you again. Completely understand where you're at, and I would completely support this position. But as previously mentioned, we got to find the money. So that's where we're at. But I definitely understand why you are where you are and why you want what you want. And thanks for the presentation.
Thank you, Michael, and I appreciate, I know we're not done, but I do appreciate the opportunity to present this to you. As you know, it's my obligation to bring this stuff forward, and that's what I'm doing tonight.
Pete?
I appreciate those comments, because we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't have you here before us to present your case, so thank you for that. My question, one of my two questions was answered. So this isn't the all-in number, so if we could, Joe, through you, Mr. Chair, to the town administrator, essentially update the board at some point with what an all-in number would be for that additional, essentially, patrolman, I guess, because the benefit piece really wouldn't change for the promotion or the theoretic promotion of the officer to a sergeant. And to you, Chief, again, this is a question I assume I know the answer to as well, but I'm going to ask it. I don't imagine you could promote a patrolman to sergeant and not backfill.
Correct, that would be a union issue, losing a spot in that patrolman's union.
But take that aside,
Yeah.
staffing-wise, your system, could that happen?
I would not be comfortable with that,
Okay,
no,
fair enough.
no. And the benefits, obviously, I don't factor into this request. What I did factor for the first-line supervisor, related school expenses, uniform badge, cell phone, for the officer, MPTC, academy tuition, initial issue, firearms, taser, training, higher physicals, PAT, psychological testing, sick and training bonus, and uniforms. So that's what's all encompassed in the expense line item.
Joe?
Just as a follow-on to what the previous speaker was requesting for updates. So you know we'd also be updating the chief's memo, which was originally in support of my budget effort going back to December, was relying upon fiscal year 2025 rates. You know, we have more understanding of where the budget and other costs like health insurance are going, so we'll factor those in as well to give you a truer cost. And just to put it out there as the first of the 5 departments to present, the minimum overall cost that was projected for enhancement of services was just under $500,000.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. And I have nothing to add. Thank you for being here. I'll turn it over to the public. Public has anything they want to say?
Peter Hughes from South Harwich. Chief, I'm looking for, the question I have is the $50 you have in there for the Excel training course for yourself?
Still working on that.
Okay, just
Yes.
checking. I think the
You're
most
going to be invited.
There you go. Chief and I took a training course one day, and both decided at the end we got nothing out of it, so, we came back the second day maybe, right? So anyhow, I think when I read this, the most compelling reason to think about this, I know money, here we go, nobody's got the money, right? But the youthfulness of those officers out there, I run into them all the time at 5 o'clock in the morning at Cumberland Farms on 28 and Harwich Board. And sometimes I say, did they graduate from high school yet? You know, the Boy Scout, and I don't mean this facetiously, Chief, but compared to me, who's getting ancient,
I say that every day.
I know, these kids are young. And I think we owe it not only to the public to make sure we're putting the safety of the public first, but also the safety of the officers who are out there. And I think it's compelling to make the case that we really do need to do this. Now, we have to find the money, whatever that means, right? We always like to do that. But I really appreciate, Chief, that you brought this forward. It is time to do it. And I thank your officers every day for being out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're looking for an increase in their budget, maybe.
All right.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. And then one final closing, and I did say it a couple weeks ago. I want to thank my team for putting this budget together with me. Most importantly, Kate Farley, who I recently lost to the MPTC. But I was in her office Friday in Falmouth asking her a few questions prior to tonight, so I thank her for that. But all seriousness, Kate has the institutional knowledge of being upstairs for 9 years. Anything I asked her about the budget, she had an answer. That is going to be sorely missed. It already has been sorely missed. But I just wanted to thank her in public again for this budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, for the next 4 departments, if you're going in order on your agenda, the Department of Public Works, Information Technology, Health Department, and Youth and Family Services, as I've said before and as I've put in a memorandum to staff, as you hear from these department heads, you're going to hear that each department head and I have been discussing these enhancement of services, meaning, you know, under the Chapter 4 of the Charter, which requires the town administrator to manage the personnel administration, and under Chapter 5 to reorganize administration, personnel administration, where a lot of these came from. So these are worthy discussions, and I just want to emphasize before we turn it over to our Public Works Director for the so-called highway budget, which we do have to update someday, that of course, as you hear from them, there's validity in everything they're talking about. These are coming from conversations that I've had with them. The question simply comes back to being able to meet the requirements of the board, which I think are legitimate, in your budget message, and balancing what our priorities are. But I will probably say that for each of the department heads you're about to hear from. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yeah, let's move with Link. And Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm here this evening with Sean Libby, our facilities manager. The brains of the operation, Kim Berube, is at home this evening and won't be joining us.
Thank you.
I had to get that in. I had the same line for probably the last 20 years. If the chair go along with this, I'd like to start talking about the EOS position first, and then into the DPW budget second. There's not much to talk. We're down 2.1%. I think that kind of speaks for itself.
You have the floor, however you'd like to present.
So the EOS position, the administrator spoke to me some time ago, and actually I can't take credit. I believe it was his brainchild, and said, why don't we create a deputy DPW director position? I need to go back in history, and some of you, at least Selectman Howell and Selectman Pekarsky, remember there was an assistant director position at the DPW when I took over as director in 2001. In 2006, we had a failed override where I had the distinct pleasure of laying off 6 line-level employees. We subsequently, with the pseudo override that came after that, we got 3 back, but we were still down 3 people. When the former assistant director retired, I threw that salary into the rank and file rather than replacing it, and we have made that structure work. I've been fortunate enough to surround myself with very good people, competent people that I've been able to promote to manager. The man to my left, we hired off the street, so to speak, as a manager position. But that's not, most of the people have come up through the ranks with me at the DPW. It's a rather flat organization, and one that has worked because of the people that are there, not necessarily the positions. I don't think anyone would structure an organization with roughly 40 full-time people, I think it's 39, I have it correctly, with 7 different departments under the DPW umbrella. The board throughout the years have added functions to the DPW. Facilities management is one, centralized facilities management. We have added centralized vehicle maintenance. When I took over as director for a while, fire and police were doing their own thing and sending a lot of their vehicles outward. A goal of former boards of selectmen was let's bring that in-house and under one roof, and we did that. And correspondingly, we've been able to hire a position, and specifically vehicles, we added 2 positions. Facilities, we've added 2 positions. The core, what you think of as the highway, is actually less bodies today than when I took over in 2003. We had 11, we have 9 now. Some of the other departments have remained static. So the DPW as a whole has grown, but only because the board has thought to centralize various functions under our umbrella, and it's worked. So I'm here this evening to make a pitch for a deputy DPW director. With nearly a $7 million budget and roughly 40 full-time people and 7 departments within the DPW, or divisions within the DPW, I really think it makes sense to have an assistant. And the last point I'd like to make is if all the stars align correctly, I am still less than 2 years away from retirement myself. So I really think it is important to consider this. If you have the memo in your packet that I prepared for the administrator, I suggested funding this with the vacant town engineer position, of which we have not had one for 3+ years, if memory serves me correctly, along with a position that I have not filled that we have at the disposal area for a scale house operator. I haven't had the need to fill that because business has slowed down a little bit over there, so we've been able to get by, plus I have a guy at the highway that's fills in and is trained. So that's a position I'm willing to give up or to bargain with in order to fill this. I feel this is a number 1 priority for me this year. I'd like to really have some succession planning in place for myself. I really would like to think, and this is for others to decide, that I'm leaving or will be leaving the DPW in a better position than I found it in. And it would go a long way to help me sleep at night if I had somebody I could show the ropes to and show how to manage a department of this size and stature. You know, we support all these other departments, but the DPW in some form or another touches every resident and taxpayer's life in town. Whether you're talking driving somewhere, we take care of the roads. Whether you're talking going to the disposal area, take care of your trash, your solid waste and recycling. All the buildings we're in, Mr. Libby maintains and makes sure is taken care of. The parks, the cemeteries, the beaches. We touch everyone's lives that are in town. And I really, really think it's important, for the reasons I've stated, to hopefully develop a deputy DPW position. I'd be happy to answer any questions on that matter.
Thank you, Link and Sean. Well done. Joe?
Chairman, if I could, Link, in your memo, there's a reference to a salary of $135,000. You talked about the 2 positions. Is that the total anticipated cost? Have you factored in benefits or anything else?
No, that doesn't include benefits. I didn't give you that, Joe. I thought since we have an existing position in the DPW, that it's kind of a wash for a benefit standpoint. We just don't have the,
And then for the board's consideration, again, that's the opening number, if you will, $135,000 to start.
Thank you, Joe.
and that was my number that I gave the administrator. I made a few calls. I was hoping to be able to attract a PE for this position, for Deputy DPW Director / PE. And I said somebody with 5 to 10 years' experience. So several of the engineering firms we do business with, I actually reached out and said, how much money are we going to need to attract somebody 5, 10 years of experience under their belt with the PE? And the 135 number seemed like it would work.
Excellent, thank you. We'll go to the board. Pete?
No, I think my question regarding the all-in number was answered, so I appreciate that. I appreciate your time and your presentation. It's logical, it makes sense to me. So thank you for that, and appreciate being here.
Thank you.
Michael? Julie?
I love the idea because we've been looking for an engineer for a while. We haven't been able to fill that position. I also like looking forward and being prepared for the future in the terms of, jealous of the retirement. But I think it's smart, and if I remember correctly, we talked about this in our goals and objectives about trying to prepare as, whether or not it was retirements for future, or even if we just were aware that different people were going to be moving on. So I like that you're coming in prepared for the future, and your job, never mind 7 departments within one other larger department, requires somebody to be below you learning that. There's a lot to learn, and then having time to ease into that position with hopefully maybe you coming back during retirement. But no, I think it, again, it's all about the money, but here the bulk of the money is there, so I like it.
Thank you, Julie. Don?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. A couple of comments first. It's over the past 20 years, it is wonderful that you've moved into taking these random ways. We had a policy of new buildings were new forever. So nothing ever happened until they fell down. We had to get a new building. So that's a tremendous thing. And frankly, I am really glad that you're walking around the street when he picked you up. But having said that, there's a couple observations here. You've got, I understand where you're coming from. On the plus side is picking up the engineering in-house, because we don't have that, and it's been a source of real problems for us. But be careful about the benefits. The health benefits are the health benefits, but the retirement benefits are pegged to salary, so that those do go in different directions depending on the pay scale that you're looking at. So to be apples for apples, we'd have to look at, what this position is, even if it picks off an FTE from another spot and shoves it over there. There's still some ancillary costs. So I would ask that Joe look into that, because, as I said, the only one that I can think of that would be static is the health care. So if somebody had a family and they're on a family plan or an individual plan, it's not going to be different if you're looking at one of your workers or one of your supervisors. But the other one is.
Thank you, Don. Michael?
Sorry, I was struggling with my mute button. Link, thank you for being here. Sean, thank you for being here. Totally understand what you're after, and appreciate you thinking to the future and you leaving. Joe, I guess the question really is to the town administrator. Because the engineering position is in a union, not filling that position would fall into negotiations, correct?
Correct, and the way I read the proposal as presented, there's at least 2 bargaining exercises that may need to take place.
Thank you. That's all I have, and thanks again.
Thank you.
We'll go to the public.
Good evening, Mark Kelleher, West Harwich. I think what Link has proposed is wonderful. We've been looking for an engineer. He's got it covered in his position. I've always thought about when Link is going to retire, he's got his succession planning in there, and he's got it covered financially. So it's a win-win for the town. Since Sean is here today, I want to bring up one other thing. In the capital budget, we have a $750,000 charge for architectural and engineering drawings for the bulkhead at Saquatucket. Thanks to Sean and John Rendon, and by the way, $750,000 in this year's budget and $9 million 2 years from now to rebuild that bulkhead. Thanks to Sean and John Rendon before he left, they brought an engineer in, and the engineer has said that that bulkhead is good for another 10 years. So there's a savings right there of $750,000 in our capital budget. So these two guys do a great job for our town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Back again, Peter Hughes, South Harwich. I love the concept. So here's the question. You bring the individual in, town engineer, heir apparent to your position at the moment. You retire in 2 years, let's pretend, maybe 3 years, maybe less, whatever. This person is the heir apparent and would move up, in theory, to your position. This position of town engineer would still, or assistant, whatever, would still be available and would get filled as well, right? You're worrying about succession.
so.
Yeah, but you're worried about one thing, succession planning,
That is
which was
correct.
to get you replaced. Once you are replaced, which is hard to imagine that could happen, but hopefully get somebody in who's going to have the same kind of longevity you have, right? But we still need, I'm trying to make a point, we still need this position over here called a town engineer or assistant, whatever you want to call it, right?
That's correct.
Okay, just checking.
We have managed to get by without an engineer on staff, as have many community development departments and so forth. It is a pain and really slows us down a lot of times. So not having a surveyor and an engineer has, slowed our response to residents' requests for various things. So having an engineer under the umbrella, is two birds with one stone, so to speak.
Well, I think that's the right play for it, no doubt about it. I'd ask the town administrator in his budget under town engineer expenses, you have an increase of $100,000 there? If I read this right?
Sure. Are we going into operating budget right now?
Not
Only
Well, just because it's under town engineer, that's all I'm saying.
That's an expense line, that's not a salary line.
I understand that, but it's money spent.
Right, it's for municipal solid waste, it's MS4 monies.
Under engineering expenses.
Correct, that would still, the town still needs to pay that.
Okay, that's
And-
interesting, okay.
If I could,
Please.
I'm not agreeing or making the argument yet that the dollars match. I know folks have said that tonight, but there's still more analysis that needs to be done, and then, more importantly, there's bargaining that needs to be done.
Correct.
So I know that folks are excited about this. I think it's great that they're excited. As I've said before, you're going to hear from all these department heads with excellent ideas. But at present, these are lowball numbers that are only going to increase as we go forward on the budget discussion. So it is not a guarantee that the salary line item for engineer is going to be a complete match for the salary line item here for the the deputy director.
Another point I would make, I have heard somewhere around that there are some folks looking for monies for structural analysis of buildings. I think a conservation commissioner or somebody I read in the paper was looking for some money associated with that function. I would hope that a qualified, certified, licensed professional engineer would be able to do those relatively simple structural engineering analyses for us and would save that money elsewhere.
Thank you, Peter. So, like, for me, to piggyback off of the last speaker's comments, exactly what was in my mind. So you unfortunately leave the town of Harwich, and then the person that we hire who's got an engineering background steps into your shoes. Is one person capable of doing both of those jobs, DPW director and town engineer?
No. And that's not my intent. My intent was to fill, I was not thinking town-wide or supporting community development. It was supporting DPW functions.
And that's all I wanted to, sure.
I'm going to say, maybe a third of my counterparts are actually engineers. They don't do much engineering as DPW directors. They do very little. You speak the language and know civil engineering, but they don't do engineering themselves. I don't imagine even a deputy DPW director / PE would be doing a lot of engineer, but we could task them with things that I have to outsource that are the small, low-hanging fruit things, so that I can respond to you when you tell me, hey, that tree that's on your town property needs to come down.
That's a
I
whole
can go
nother
and-
conversation we have to have, because I have to go.
I understand.
I have one of those.
I didn't mean to open that can of worms.
And I appreciate that. I just want to make sure we're not leaving ourselves exposed by taking a salary that was dedicated for an engineer for the town and bifurcating the job responsibilities.
Well, in an ideal world, I would not propose this, but we've had a vacant engineer position for 3.5 years.
So you're saying we're not in an ideal world?
No, yes, sir, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Joe?
Recognizing that we're having some good conversations that will lead to the priorities that will be our budget, because that's what our budget is every year. It's a finalized statement of our priorities. The hypothetical scenarios that were presented to our director, I would caution everybody, are exactly that. There is no direct correlation that if this position of deputy director were to be created, and if there were a retirement in either the deputy director or perhaps in the director level, the town would do a search. It's not an automatic that a deputy director would go to the position of director, for no other reason than the deputy director may not be seeking that. And so I want to sort of put the wet blanket on that discussion right now, in theory only. Tonight, what I hope we're getting to, and I think we are with the questions, is what is the value, and then what is the cost? And so we still have to do more work on the cost, but clearly we're hearing the value statements for sure.
Julie?
Just want to say this publicly, though, in terms of, a PE, professional land surveyor is going to be able to do certain things. I don't think we would have a professional land surveyor being responsible for structural. That's a separate engineer. So just for the public to understand, this can't be a catch-all and throw this guy in and make him do everything. Structural is separate from PLS, so.
Any other questions from the board on the enhancement? Okay.
Jeff?
Yeah, sorry, Michael?
Oh, thank you. I'm just a little bit confused as to where that conversation went. We're talking about adding a position as deputy director so that the DPW director can have a succession plan. And I think town administrator just covered it. But if the DPW director retires and hopefully the deputy director has been groomed to take over, that we would certainly consider that. Going outside and hiring, like we do in many, many positions, is secondary to that. Am I seeing this correctly, or are we talking about somebody moving up and then us having a complete vacancy again, and not just filling a deputy director position?
Yeah, for me, it's just, I think it's dangerous in the hypothetical stage to say this is exactly how it's going to go. I think the better thing that the board can rely upon is, as your administrator, what I've said is whenever there's a vacancy, the first thing we do is look at a reorganization opportunity. So I understand how the director has articulated clearly the plan for retirement. I won't say desire per se. But that's sort of what I'm getting to, that we're talking about the fiscal year 26 budget that can impact upon our operations next year. Obviously, there are implications for the future, but whenever there's an opportunity to analyze and reorganize, we always take that opportunity. So I didn't want anyone to take it as a fait accompli. Secondly, to reiterate, there are a number of positions involved here that would require bargaining. Lastly, as I said at the beginning of this, what I mean to say next is meant to be complementary to the director, meaning the vision that he's talking about, but also add where I was talking about. And if you look at that flat organization, if you will, the delta between the 5-line managers and the next step is extraordinary between the two. So there is no natural progression beyond the 5 managers. So for me, thank you. I think for those that are watching from the back of the director's head, there's an org chart that shows that line. So that's one of the other things that this could achieve, if you will, is that the chasm between the managers and the director position would be lessened by the presence of a DPW deputy.
Thank you. Michael, that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you to the town administrator. Secondarily, the engineering line item, also to the town administrator. I do believe we've crept up on that over the last 5 years, and I don't mean that in a bad way as far as crept up, more a need for additional services. But is there a delta between the salary range for us hiring a straight engineer to what the current table is and what we spend on engineering every year?
So if I understand the question in the previous commentary, the total line item for engineer is still made up of salaries and wages and expenses. So the total line in there, we do have expenses for projects that are related to engineering, not just related to the engineer position itself. And so that's why I'm suggesting that in this scenario, we wouldn't necessarily delete the engineering department per se and replace it with the deputy DPW director. There's still a need for engineering-type projects and expenses, not the least of which would be the MS4 program, which is separate and distinct from Public Works.
So, thank you, Joe, and that I would agree with. And I just really wanted to point out that there was monies available outside of the engineer's salary as currently listed on the table for that hire.
I took that as a comment, Mr. Chairman, not a question. Was I, to the previous speaker, was it?
I would say yes, Joe. Having been part of it, I do believe that there's some money there that could be added to another salary to help us get there without eliminating the position, to your point.
Thank you.
Great. Done.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah.
You know, tonight, and I just want to voice my objection to some of the comments that are being made from members of the Finance Committee, whether they're public or not. This was supposed to be a joint meeting. They did fail to post, but this is a presentation to the boards. The time for public comment on the enhancement of services should come in my opinion, should come at the point where we're putting the budget forward after we make our decision, and department heads shouldn't be, whether it's positive or negative, being grilled about numbers during a presentation as members of the public.
Thank you, Michael. Don?
Wasn't going to say this, but I couldn't disagree more. Having said that, the situation in the department about union negotiations, because you're going to create another position. I just want everybody to understand that you create a position that's subject to a union. We have 8 unions. It's not just one monolithic union. And if we create a position, my guess is that the union's going to start insisting that that position get filled. So it's not as easy to get out of it as it is to get into it. I'm just making that as a comment. So as we look forward to this, if we start pulling positions in to create another position, you don't know yet what the union that's going to lose the position is going to say, and you don't know what they would say if you don't fill it later on, if the circumstances change and you decide not to go and refill the hierarchy. So I just caution you that this isn't like an easy swap.
Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with the previous speaker. The word is simple, it's bargaining, but the process is not, and it's not meant to be simple. And as you add different associations to that conversation, it gets more complex. So I do appreciate the comments.
You want to proceed?
I'd just like to close a couple things that have been said about my impending retirement. I have no date set, and I'll say the same thing that I've been saying for last couple of years. One bad day away to a little less than 2 years, if all the stars align.
Thank you.
You know, I'm here now because I enjoy my job, I enjoy the people I get to work with, and the challenges that it presents, is why I'm still here.
Thank you, Link. We're lucky to have you. I think I speak for the whole town.
Well, thank you, but that is not an academic exercise, okay? Under 2 years is not an academic exercise, so I
Made
want to
your point.
employ the importance of this is not just me wanting to build a hierarchy or a bit larger organization. It really, I think for stability, I really hope you try to vet this out as best you can and
Thank
come
you.
to a favorable conclusion.
Thank you. All right.
I want to see the calendar with the X's on it.
I'd show you my retirement clock that says 000 on it, but I'm going to reset it, folks. I'll reset it for another year, but
Do you have more on the actual, your budget?
I can. I'll go as deep as you want. I'd say the total budget, we're down 2.1%. The line items that made that possible with an organization this size is bulk fuel and solid waste are both down. Bulk fuel, we had positive pricing. Hopefully, the county's going to get to be bidding that a little sooner than later. And solid waste has slowed down.
Okay. Board? Joe?
Mr. Chairman, what you have, again, in your packet is the budget comparison for Department 421. So I do want to emphasize that 421 is the main line munis reporting for what we consider to be highway. It covers the vast majority of everything that the director can speak to. There are some other budgets that relate, they're much smaller in nature. Some of the building accounts that we have, street lighting and things of that nature. But you do have, because you have talked as a board about wanting to do a, quote, deeper dive with the bigger budgets. The bigger budgets are police, fire, and public works. So you do have that in your packet, as well as a recap again of the transfer station analysis, AKA audit, that was done in fiscal year '24. So you have those in your packet. And I think the director could speak to these as well as if I can help in any way.
Please. If there's anything you want to add.
Salary and wage, you know, we followed the directives. The only new position was the EOS. Everything else was per directives from the administrator. And the expenses, like I just recapped, we were down $143,606 on the expense side, solid waste and bulk fuel.
And Mr. Chairman, again, any numbers you see for salaries and wages, there's the bottom line number that's been in the draft Appendix B. The 2% wage adjustment that we've been talking about is not yet incorporated into the specific munis reports. So that salaries number is separate and distinct from the 2% wage adjustment generally.
Great. We'll go to the board for any questions.
Julie?
I don't really have any specific questions. I get the numbers in terms of where you're down and, you know, the only other thing I guess I continue to wonder about is our offering the construction contractor services of getting rid of their debris and such, because it costs us a lot of money. And the other place I really see a couple of increases, but I think it's repair service. So I know you guys have been working on a lot of different vehicles and stuff over the time, so I'm not really surprised by that.
Please.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, vehicles, we went up. Honestly, every time Kyle comes in my office, everything is underfunded. You know, when we go and spec a truck out, we're asked for the capital in August from the year before, and then you've got a waiting line of like a year to order it for it to show up after you order it. So literally, you've got 2 years from when I provide the town numbers to when it shows up. It's almost an impossible task. We've asked our vehicle maintenance manager to come up with those numbers. This was parts and supplies, not anything capital related, but yes, we did increase that.
And I don't really have anything other than that.
Don?
Nothing other than to say that I agree with the comment that was just made. 5 years ago, you weren't looking at $85,000 pickup trucks.
Yes.
Michael?
No questions.
Pete?
No, not at this time, thank you.
I have none. Well, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
All right.
Did a
thanks
great
for
job, Sean.
Glad I was here.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's move to information technology. Hey, Sarah.
Chairman, members of the board, is our information technology. Of all the potential enhancement of services, the information technology one does offer the greatest promise to date. But again, we still have to analyze the numbers, because you can, as you'll hear, our IT director, there we go, presenting, with this enhancement of service, we could save, as it relates to other costs such as Barnstable County. The only caveat I put out there in advance is a deep dive on the salary, the expenses, and all that for the new position. Again, this is also potentially bargainable, but there could be savings within the fiscal year, meaning fiscal year '26, if we're able to pull back on one of the relationships we have.
Great. Hi, Sarah.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, so the main thing what I found over the past like 2 years, in the beginning, working with Barnstable County, it worked, but they've taken on more towns. They've also had loss of staff due to retirements and people moving. So over this past year and a half, there have been like some inconsistencies with them, you know, like needing to like not cover a day, and so that kind of like leave me like shorthanded on the 2 days a week that they come in. And with the increase of the technology reinvestment, obviously the town's getting more technologically advanced, and so there's days when like I'm trying to, you know, do a training for upcoming software, like Laserfish and stuff, and then I get like just a stack of requests for tickets and stuff. So my thinking was that by offsetting from Barnstable County and having a full-time IT help desk person, that would help offset the cost and would better put the IT department in a position to handle all those technological needs.
Well, it makes sense on paper. I see here the budget calls for $96,000 annually from the Barnstable County, and you're suggesting that the salary range is between $50,000 and $70,000?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll go to the board. Michael?
I have no questions. Thank you, Sarah, and certainly support the concept and look forward to the further vetting of the numbers.
Julie?
I felt the same. I think it's an important position, and you need consistency in help and be able to schedule the things that you need to do. So, and I thank you for all the advances you brought in such a short period of time. So.
You're welcome.
Pete?
The Barnstable County budget, 96,000. I know it's somewhere, there it is. Do you know how that's paid, essentially? If you were to get this new position, clearly that person's not going to be in place July 1.
Right.
So my question is Barnstable County paid on a monthly retainer? Is it a quarterly retainer?
Yes, it's, we have the intermunicipal agreement with them through the end of this fiscal year, and we pay them monthly. They'll bill us monthly, and it gets paid out of the line item.
And so I assume that 96 is divided by 12?
Yes.
to
Yeah,
come
it's
to-
about just over $8,000 a month we pay to Barnstable County.
Okay. And so to that point, assuming that you can find somebody, then at least you're not depleting that budget in excess. But to the overall point, and I think Joe made it a few minutes ago, love to see what the total number looks like and where it stands, and appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
Don?
Not asking you to look at a crystal ball, but if the agreement ends on June 30th, my own experience with intermunicipal agreements and government in general is they're probably not going to ask you for less next year. So I'd be curious about what everybody's thinking that their mentality is in terms of what those, because I gather that we are now competing with a whole bunch more people than we were originally when the agreement started. Any clues to where they're headed?
Well, where they're headed, no. We haven't, last time when we did the thing, Joe and I sat down with Bill, the IT director for Barnstable County. And I know basically what they do in their pricing is they'll take the average of everybody across the board hourly and then put that in for their pricing. I don't think there'll be an increase. It's been the 96,000 for the past 2 years that I've been here. So I haven't got any indication that they'd be going up in price.
I'm sorry, what's that based on again?
From what I know is they take the average of everybody's salary at Barnstable County IT, and that's how they've figured out the pricing for the year.
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Please.
Just to add on to that, so we have, as Sarah said, there's an intermunicipal agreement, but it's specifically with Barnstable County IT Department. So it's through the county organization, but that specific department. We're still waiting to hear an administration on the overall county assessments. So as they go through their budget through the month of February, that's when we'll hear if other costs are going up. I would argue that we would imagine that the assessment's going up so that there could be an increase in the Barnstable County IT. However, that potential increase, I think, just further begs for the enhancement.
That's kind of where I was heading.
Sure.
That's it.
Thank you, and I'll turn it over to the public. Anyone? Please?
Mark Kelleher, West Harwich. I'll ask 3 questions and I'll just take them. Will you have the expertise hiring somebody off the street that you would not, that you'd be able to get the expertise that Barnstable County offers? In other words, is Barnstable County offering expertise that you're not going to be able to get from somebody off the street? Second of all, where will this person be housed? Because your office is kind of crowded. And the third thing is, you're doubling the size of your department in slow times, and you will have slow times. Will this employee be able to do other duties, maybe help with other departments with billing, or just fill in? So those are the 3 questions I have.
I'm going to let Joe start.
Well, thank you, and not that the director couldn't answer these, but these really are top-of-the-house questions. So with regard to, quote, hiring off the street, we do, Sarah and I and others, expect that we'll be able to attract qualified candidates based on the vision that Sarah has and based on Sarah's understanding of the marketplace. Furthermore, depending upon what happens at the county, the street might be a parking lot, and it might be related to other municipal or other government organizations. I'll just put that out there theoretically. The IT department generally is more than sufficient to handle at least another individual, if not 2 more individuals, so the space, if you know it generally, is well situated with the director in the back of the office and the help desk professional in the front of the office. That's precisely how it's done now when Barnstable County has personnel here. And then with regard to if they would help other departments, that's that bargaining piece. We, Sarah and I, with Megan Eldridge, Assistant Town Administrator, and Angelique McGibbon, HR, would craft a job description that we would then bargain if needed. And so, the language in that, and the details in that language are to come later. But the intent of this would be primarily to be an add to staff for information technology. And last but not least, there are 2 presenters this evening, one of whom is Sarah, who fit the bill of the organizational structure that I have told you for my entire career here that I don't like, and that's the single-person department. And so this would bring us a long way towards getting rid of one of the 5 single-person departments. So that position that we're contemplating has to come to bear first, foremost, and always for information technology.
Thank you, Joe. Do you want to add anything, Sarah?
No, good.
All right, well, thank you for being here. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I direct my
I'm
question
sorry.
to Joe? No, it's really for Joe anyway.
Yes,
but-
please.
So is this 96,000 in line item on the munis report 530-902. Is that where that 96 sits? Support.
So where's my IT director?
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. So under expenses, so where that says munis is no, I believe that is the town's investment. And
No, I meant
and our
the
fund
line
up-
above, support the 530-902, the line above that.
Oh, thank you. Line item for Barnstable County IT, is that incorporated in the quote support line item?
Yeah, that is in, yes, the support line item.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
Yep, I appreciate that. Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Health Department. From the cheap seats, huh?
Pretty crowded in here.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I want to reiterate, when you hear from our Director of Health, and I think you already see it, there is a comprehensive, coherent argument for the establishment of a division. And that came out of the vision and the guidance of our director, as well as contemplation with me as town administrator. I will defer to the director in a moment, but as you can see, what this request really gets to is for the town of Harwich to try to meet what we see in present day and in the future, which mirrors not only municipal governments, but other forms of government, where you have a health and human services division. So again, I have a hand in this, so if it was bad, you can look more to me than you could to Carrie, and if it's good, you can look more to the director than you can to me.
Well, thanks for being here, Carrie.
Yep, good evening.
Good evening.
So I just want to go through a couple of highlights. As some of you may know, the Lower Cape Communities partnered with Crescendo Consulting to conduct a public health needs assessment. This assessment identified areas of concern that directly impact the quality of life for Harwich residents, including increased cost of housing, access to health care, increase in daily living expenses, food insecurity, and stigma surrounding substance abuse and mental health. Further, it was noted that 50.8% of respondents to the survey stated that they did not know or were unsure of where to turn in a mental health crisis. I believe that we can address some of these needs by uniting Youth and Family Services, Housing Advocate, and the Health Department under the Health and Human Services Division. So I'm making a twofold request. One for the creation of the Health and Human Services Division, the other for the creation of the Health and Human Services Division Leader. Even though departments exist already that offer some of the mental health services, housing resources, and health programs, and staff is doing an amazing job with the time and resources they currently have in place, they are limited by the nature of their departments, by staff sizes, by budgets, and for some demographics served. The needs assessment found that there are still significant information gaps, organizational silos that hinder the effectiveness of community support services. The division would create a sense of belonging and collaboration between the necessary public health departments. The intent of the Health and Human Services Division is to bring more social services to our residents. Our needs assessment has found that people don't always know where to turn for help, and researching the right resources can be overwhelming when you are struggling. The intent of the Health and Human Services Division Leader would not be to take away responsibilities from existing department heads or to create an extra level of supervision. The intent of this position is to provide support to the departments, create a sense of unity and collaboration amongst these essential public health departments while performing their own set of daily tasks. These tasks will include building education opportunities for our residents on services that are available to them, as well as health prevention programs, provide office hours to connect residents looking for resources that may help assist whatever challenges they are up against, work with community leaders, departments, and organizations to find the best solution for our residents, and advocate for policy change that may provide relief. This will be an expense incurred by the town. The cost benefit will directly be for our residents, mostly in the form of healthcare savings. For example, by focusing on preventive care, such as immunization programs, health education, and early diagnosis, the department can reduce the incident of costly emergency care and hospitalizations, preventing chronic disease and managing healthcare conditions. Early help avoids expensive treatments in the long run and reduces emergency healthcare costs, as well as helping lower dependence on public health insurance. A well-functioning Health and Human Services division can help residents access resources that allow them to improve their health and economic stability, reducing reliance on Medicare, food assistance, and other government-funded programs. Our target demographic is to reach working families and residents living below the median income. But it would not be limited to residents meeting these criteria. We would be looking to assist anybody that needed it. We have such a robust Council on Aging that provides many of the same necessary services to our senior population. However, there are limited municipal services for our residents from high school to 59. I have heard time and time again that we need to help keep our young families here, and that doesn't always mean affordable housing or recreational programs, both are which are very needed. It can be as simple as connecting them to valuable resources and providing a helping hand. The services and programs provided by the COA are of value to this community and community members, and their efforts are outstanding. But 64.7% of our population is 64 years or younger. What I would like to see is a similar offering of services tailored to meet the needs of our target population of working families and households earning below the median threshold, ensuring a healthy and productive community.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add, the key word in this discussion this evening for the Health Department request for enhancement of service is division. As you know, under the charter, under Chapter 5, Town Administration, it talks about and describes what a division is. And a division is one or more departments coupled under a division with a division director. And the best examples so far are finance, division, and technically Division of Public Works, even though we call it time and again Department of Public Works. So that's what this gets to. It's a management right that exists in the Town of Harwich Charter. Again, everything that's laid out here is bargainable and requires that conversation. But it is a worthy endeavor to discuss creating a new division as is allowed. With that, I'll turn it back over to you and our presenter.
Thank you. I'll go to the board. We'll see who has questions for you. We'll start with Don.
I don't have any questions, but I appreciate the presentation.
Michael?
I have no questions either, and thank you, Carrie, very much. Great presentation.
Thank you, Michael.
Julie?
I don't have any questions. I remember when you were here before, and the statistics that you gave were, like I always say at the housing ones, depressing.
Yeah.
So I like the organization, and thank you for the thoughtful approach.
Pete?
No, I don't. Thank you very much for your time. Joe actually answered my question regarding the creation of a division, so appreciate that.
Well, I'll just add that mental health is, in my opinion, the most overlooked and underserved aspect of traditional healthcare. So for you to be thinking about bringing this in home to our town and the demographics that you're looking to service is, in my mind, really great in the forethinking and strategizing to help our citizens here in Harwich. I don't have any other questions regarding the cost. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Again, Mr. Chairman, as far as costs, we consider those to be minimum to start without further analysis.
I think that's the theme of the evening, right?
Amen.
All right.
Free
Thank
to
you,
go?
Carrie. You are free to go.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, if I could, next for our enhancement of services is our Director of Youth and Family Services. And as Ashley comes forward to make her presentation, again, this is, Ashley is one of our 5 presently single-person departments. I'll leave it to her to give the excellent presentation as to the validity of a professional staff member, but administration always supports the concept of abolishing single-person departments and enhancing them where possible.
Hey, Ashley.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Of course, thank you very much. Sorry, technical difficulties here.
Sarah just left. Do you need any help?
No, there it goes.
All right.
Just needed a minute. Anyway, so thank you.
Get her
so
back
much.
here if we needed to.
Absolutely, she's great for that. So I just kind of want to walk you through a little bit of kind of currently where my department is at, what we're looking for, and kind of why we're looking for it now. So currently, it is just me. I'm a licensed mental health counselor by trade. I'm a nationally certified counselor through the National Board of Certified Counselors. I work in close tandem with my canine co-counselor, Teddy. We do animal-assisted therapy interventions together. But from a human standpoint, it's just me kind of doing all of the different services that we've got. Current services that we offer include short-term individual counseling for youth up to age 24. I have expanded the age range since I've been here. Originally, when I started, it was ages 11 to 21. There's a high need for folks 11 and under, and also a national need for our young adults, that 19 to 24 population. So we do currently provide services for that age bracket. Short-term is defined as 6 to 12 sessions. For some clients, that is 6 to 12 weeks if they decide to come weekly. For other clients, that can get spread out for kind of a varying amount of time depending on exactly what their needs are. That is all offered to Harwich residents at no cost to them. We are insurance blind. We don't take insurance. They just come, we work together, get what their needs are met, and go from there. This also includes parent coaching, grandparent coaching, caregiver coaching. So sometimes, especially for our 0 to 5 population, the most effective way to help them with their mental health needs is to work with the parents. That's also something that is a service that's offered for anyone that fits within that up to 24 age bracket. Sometimes parents need a little bit of assistance figuring out, how do I talk to my child about this, or how do I handle this situation? So that's all services that we can kind of offer. Programming for this year has included a number of new programs meeting varying ages. It's included a grandparenting support group for grandparents raising grandchildren, monthly series on understanding various mental health topics and different parenting and caregiver topics. We also have different groups. Some of them are intervention groups, meaning that these are kids, youth and teens who are coming with a particular diagnosis, whether that's anxiety or ADHD. Other times it's more geared towards prevention. The prevention programs are more around building self-confidence, self-awareness, resiliency building, those skills that we kind of all need to be successful functioning human beings. If we give those to kids early, we head off a lot of problems later down the road. One of our programs, I brought some artwork sampling for you. This was from Girl Power this past fall. Our girls and our mentors each traced their hand and created either an image or words, kind of identifying who they are as a person. They then cut them out, and the girls kind of arranged them on the poster board. This will eventually be hanging in Albro House. I just haven't found the correct spot for it just yet. Work in progress. But just so you know, we have a lot of different creative approaches to kind of help people with what their needs are. There are also a number of other things that I'm involved in, ranging from I will be taking over the preschool support program management from the COA at the end of this school year. This current year, we've kind of, Julie Wittes, our COA director, and I have been co-managing it so I can kind of learn the ropes and understand what that need is there. But that is going to be shifting to my department at the end of the year. I've been involved in multiple different school programs, including the Monomoy Regional High School Wellness Fair. I've made presentations in the middle schools, health classes on mental health topics, been invited to be part of the Monomoy Regional Schools crisis team, working with the planning department on the hazard mitigation plan from a mental health perspective, providing some of that knowledge in responding to disasters and other hazards, and just a lot of other things, helping other departments as the subject matter expert on mental health. The more that we get the word out there, the more supports that we offer, the healthier people are. We reduce a whole lot of costs when we're able to do that. Adding a clinician is something that does have costs and benefits. From a cost perspective, lowball, and I don't have access to any of the benefits information or kind of where things are going with negotiations right now, but you're looking at approximately $69,457 a year for a full-time staff member to come on board. The reason I'm suggesting full-time is we're going to get a better quality candidate pool if we go for full-time as opposed to part-time. The benefits, in my opinion, and what I'm hoping will help you see, far outweigh what the costs are for that. In hiring another individual to take on clinical individual counseling, you're going to more than double the availability that my department is able to offer to our town. Right now, I'm splitting time between individual counseling groups, programs, workshops, and other administrative duties that I have as a department head. Adding another clinician, they're solely going to be focused on that clinical care. So you're able to, again, more than double the availability for individual sessions, parent coaching, and caregiver coaching as well. We also open the possibility of potentially expanding the age range further to include some of the adult age range population that Carrie was talking about as having a high need for mental health care right now. What I'm currently able to do when I have adults that call me, because sometimes I am the identified point person, we don't know who else to call, so we'll start with you, is I'm able to refer them to other places that are able to see them. But it would be nice to be able to pull some of that a little bit more in-house. It's a little warmer, friendlier kind of than, here, call this person. The other significant benefit is you're going to free time and energy on my end for me to be able to dedicate to other efforts in terms of intervention and prevention services that we're able to offer to the community. I'm currently pretty well at the maximum of what I'm able to do as a single person, department head, and single person kind of doing all of these supports and services. I enjoy the work and I'm happy to do it, but from a realistic standpoint, we're pretty close to the maximum of what I'm able to offer as that one person. We're also, the most important benefit is going to significantly allow us to better meet the needs for mental health care of our community. One of the questions I often get asked is why we need school counselors in addition to community-based counselors, which is what I am. School counselors are hugely important to the well-being of our youth, but their focus is on school, as helping students to be successful. So they're helping students to be able to access the curriculum, which means that they're able to be present in classrooms and learn the information that their teachers are presented. They're able to help with interpersonal interactions throughout the day. Those interpersonal interactions include with same age peers, older age peers, younger age peers, as well as various types of interactions with different adults in the building. You're going to talk differently with your principal and interact differently with your school principal than you are with your regular classroom teacher. You're going to interact with an older student, same age student, or younger student a little bit differently, depending on specifics of the situation. School counselors help with all of that. They also, students are also required to be in school setting, engaged in that, accessing the curriculum, learning all the things they're supposed to do, interacting with all of those people for an entire school day. That's a big ask for our kids. So school counselors significantly help them be able to successfully do that. One of the pieces that impacts that are learning differences, ability to do ability differences or disabilities, and then mental health needs. There is absolutely overlap with our school counselors and our community-based counselors, and there should be. Our best practice standards are that we have those folks in schools to support students in being their best selves, in addition to the community-based counselors. As a community-based counselor, I'm able to go more in depth with clients that are coming to see me, which means we're able to help them develop more insight, more understanding, more awareness, more skill building. We also provide a safe non-school space to be able to go into some topics the kids just aren't comfortable talking about in school. And it's, if you think about if you have a kiddo who's coming for trauma counseling and you expect them to, they're going to leave a class, go to an office in a building, sit, talk about trauma for 45 minutes, and then you expect them to go back to class. That's not always possible. Sometimes it's safer and more effective for them to talk about that separately from school to be able to manage those symptoms so they're able to access the curriculum, be successful students. American Counseling Association, American School Counseling Association, and the National Association of School Psychologists, all of our kind of professional organizations that do a lot of the research and advocacy work for us, their best practice standards are that we have both. You have school counselors working in partnership with your community-based counseling, which is what we currently have here in Harwich. And so, let's see. So the other pieces that I wanted to kind of talk to you about, why now? We have a couple of changes that are coming down the pipeline for mental health care on Cape Cod that are just going to potentially really tax the services that we already have. We have a provider shortage out there. There are not enough providers around to meet the health needs of our community anywhere. That often leads to accessible crisis care or our ability to find a clinician, so things often become crisis level before folks are able to receive services. Gosnell will be moving their detox facility to Wareham from Falmouth at some point within the next year. And unfortunately, due to state budget cuts, the Department of Mental Health is seriously looking at closing their facility in Pecasset. Both of those facilities currently serve 18+ only, so there are no beds available for children. Just as a side note, there are no inpatient psychiatric beds available on Cape Cod for juveniles. So the closest that you're going to be going is usually South Shore or New Bedford area for inpatient care if you need that level. Anytime we move adult level care off Cape, again, those things trickle down. So now mom or dad or grandparents are having to go further for care, makes it harder on the kids that are still here. We have rising rates of mental health care or mental health need across the board. and again, increased pressure on student systems. And I think probably the biggest piece of why this is important and why this is important now, our needs assessments are showing that this is what our community is in need of. They are consistently reporting across multiple types of need assessment that there is a greater need for mental health care than what we currently provide. That includes the county Department of Human Services, that conducted a children's baseline needs assessment. Results came in this just a couple of months ago, showing that that's a primary need is access to care. And as our health director was just kind of quoting earlier, the needs assessment that was conducted locally with just our lower Cape populations had a similar indication. So that's kind of my overall presentation. Happy to answer any questions that you all have.
Well, that was unbelievable how you just rattled everything. Kind of hypnotized, listen. So thank you for being here. That was great. I'll turn it over to Joe. Do you have anything you want to say before?
I would have just said what you said,
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman. Clearly, our
tough to follow.
subject matter experts,
All
including
right.
the present speaker, know what they're doing.
We'll start with Michael.
Ashley, thank you very much. Great presentation, and that's an awful lot to absorb. I have no questions right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Julie.
No, it is, it's an amazing presentation, and you know the facts, and, again, I would say that, here you are trying to plan ahead and try to help our youth, which is incredibly important, and I think kids are struggling mentally so badly across the board. What frustrates me is at the state level of how they continue to abandon the Cape in terms of mental health, in terms of, regular health care, whether it's children, adults, elderly. And so I like where we're going with this. Of course, it's money.
Yes.
In whatever way we can figure out a way, because helping the members of our community who need it most also falls back to the discussion about creating a division and sharing resources. So I like all of this because this is truly trying to help our community on a daily basis, and it's not just school related.
Yep.
But I would say that we, all across the Cape, need to continue to pressure our, representatives and our senators to do more for us here, because we're all lacking. And you can't, and nobody can plug that hole. So, thank you.
Pete.
Nothing to add, some great points by Julie that I would agree with. Appreciate your knowledge and your presentation. Very well done, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The original intent of the department, the position, was to create an environment of wellness, not to be dealing with problems. I think everybody needs to focus on the fact that you're late to the game if you're dealing with addiction, or if you're dealing with depression or other issues that might have been preventable. So going outside of the classroom is a real help. Your kids don't have problems that go away at 3 o'clock. So having said all that, my question is kind of an organizational one. Do you deal physically at the middle school in Chatham?
Yes, so I have gone to Monomoy Middle School for a number of different things, including school-sponsored events. I was just there for Career Day a few weeks ago, and I've been in there several of their health classes throughout this year, helping with the mental health and self-care topic that's part of their curriculum. I also ran at the middle school a group called Managing ADHD that was for students with ADHD, helping them learn strategies for how to kind of manage that differently. And not at the middle school, but with the middle school population, I had a program in the fall called Building Confidence Through Art. That was an art therapy program that was held at the 204 for middle school students, around confidence building and things like that.
Yeah, I had someone who went through the exercise with the Council on Aging and Girl Power, and all these things are healthy thoughts and mentoring kind of thoughts. But the reason I brought that up is because I'm quite certain you don't say, okay, Chatham kids stand over there, and Harwich kids, you're my responsibility. We've kind of morphed into that because the school system has changed. Personally, I think the time is right to have the conversation with Chatham about underwriting part of this department, because they benefit from it. And you're absolutely right. I've seen this with friends and family, that There are no pediatric psychiatrists. There are no adolescent psychiatrists. You have to take a show on the road across the bridge for that. It's kind of daunting, and it creates bigger problems than needed to happen because it takes a long time to unpack all that. So, again, the practical question I have is, isn't there a time for a discussion with Chatham on this? Because practically speaking, it's too late to start dealing with these kids when they're in high school. It used to be appropriate to start talking to 7th or 8th grade, but particularly with drug interdiction, I'm thinking the upper level of elementary school is really where you need to start now, and especially with social media and these little things. They're kids that couldn't get information that would get them into trouble find it readily now when their parents aren't home. So we got to be mindful of where the game is in terms of where your hours are deployed. And there's only one of you.
Correct.
So I appreciate the presentation.
Thank you, Don. So a few questions, if I may. If I'm hearing you right, you're saying your interest is to create space for more one-on-one counseling sessions. That's the 30,000-foot view of what you're asking for. And I loved how you said insurance blind, right? I think that's a really nice way to put it. Is there something that prevents a municipality from allowing somebody like you to enter into like third-party reimbursements and discussions with the major providers where you don't charge a copay, but it might be
That not if you are somebody who has a copay, that typically is non-negotiable with the insurance companies. That is part of as the insured person. That is part of your contract with your insurance.
Yeah,
exactly.
Sure.
That you're going to cover that part of the cost. So I mean, could we create programming or something that would subsidize that? That's certainly something that I'd be happy to kind of look into. But typically, no. If we are utilizing insurance, that individual is contractually obligated through their insurance to pay that part.
Pay that copay.
Yeah, or deductible as well. Sometimes deductibles apply to mental health.
Right. And you must get referrals from Monomoy.
Yes.
Right, on a consistent basis? Okay. And to Don's point, Chatham could never have an Ashley, but I'm just asking if Chatham has somebody in your
They are
role.
working on it. So currently, individual counseling and the coaching services are available to Harwich residents only. When I'm contacted by somebody outside of Harwich for that particular service, I act as a referral source. So I provide information on how to access somebody and, to the best of my ability, connect them with somebody that has an opening. The group programming, workshops, all of that, it is impossible to say this is available for only Harwich residents with a few exceptions. Girl Power and some of the school-specific programming is available for those students only. But there are other ones where I'm able to be a little bit more flexible with that. Chatham has right before I started, so this would have been the town meeting of 2023, for FY24, they created 2 positions, an adult behavioral health clinician and a children's behavioral health clinician. They have hired for the adult person. As far as I'm aware, the children's position has been open since it was posted. So there potentially could be a counterpart. They've structured their programming a little bit differently. It's I don't remember which department it's nestled in, but it's not its own standalone. So there is possible for some equivalent, but anyone's best guess. It gets complicated. Cost of living, housing kind of impacts providers as well.
Okay, well, thank you. I'll turn it to the public. Anybody from the public have all right, hearing none. Thank you for your time. Excellent presentation. We appreciate all that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, that concludes your discussion on enhancement of services. It would not, however, conclude your discussion on budgets. Again, when this meeting was first contemplated, you were looking to do a deep dive into the 3 big budgets. So next up would be the fire department. And again, we don't have packet material. I apologize for that, Chief, but I suspect you and the deputy can speak generally to what's been published in the Appendix B.
Certainly.
Gentlemen,
Good evening.
thank you for waiting.
Oh, happy to sit through it. It was some great information, and we didn't bring artwork. I'm kind of wish I had known. Craig was going to run out real quick and see what he could rummage through in the office supplies, but did not happen. So
being here, gentlemen.
We appreciate the opportunity. So real quick on the budget that we submitted to this point, it represents what the budget instructions were, which is our budget from FY '25 with any step raises or contractual increases that were required, and a level service fund. So we didn't add any services, we didn't change anything. We calculated our overtime like we always do. And that's pretty much what the budget you see in front of us. What this budget shows for us, which is going to be a significant change in the department, is we are anticipating 5 retirements beginning roughly July 1st. Our EMS officer will be retired, well, he actually retires by the end of July. 2 of our captains are going to retire by the end of August. Our fire inspector retires by mid-August. And the most painful for Craig and I is going to be the assistant to the fire chief, Sue Pyers, is done on July 10th. So we're looking at this year's budget to see what we can do to kind of impact some of those changes. We are actually posting Sue's position this week, and we're going to try and fill it as early as possibly April 1st, and have the position shadow over the course of the rest, because Sue's position, just so you know, the assistant to the fire chief does all of our budget, all of our payroll, all of our bills, all of the fire prevention stuff, all of our EMS billing that gets handled to the billing company. So there's so much involved in that position that to just have somebody walk in after 2 weeks and be like, hey, this is your job. So we're going to try and replace it in this year's budget. We think we can make it work looking at the budget. And then the other possibility, because we had budgeted for several of the retirements in this year, we're going to try and hire 3 of the firefighters as early as June 1st to get them up and trained, so July 1st we can start putting them into place with these coming. There'll be promotions. 2 of the captains are retiring, EMS officer, fire prevention officer. We've already advertised internally for the promotional vacancies for EMS and fire prevention so that we can have those people take over and start shadowing, because again, those positions represent such a big change from the normal duties that our personnel do. So a lot of changes that we're going through. It's going to put a lot of pressure on the deputy and I to kind of manage the organization going through. The loss of, I'm really not trying to overblow it, the loss of the administrative assistant or Sue Pyers is going to be the biggest one that we're going to have to adjust to. We'll get there, and I don't see a problem. Looking at our budget for this year's budget, I know the overtime is always an area of concern. We try really hard to manage it the best we can. There's no direct correlation between percentage of the year that we are in overtime, other than we've always kind of tracked it that way, and it's always worked. We haven't come up short. And this year, I looked at it this morning, we're at 63% of the year, and we're at 60% of the overtime. So we're running a little plus, considering we currently have 5 people out. We have 1 long-term vacancy I don't expect to return probably before August. 2 parental leaves that are going to come back. 1 comes back next week, 1 comes back next month. And then we have a line of duty injury that we expect will probably be 8 or 12 weeks. So we're struggling through like we always do. It's not unusual for us to have people out. A lot of people get hurt doing this job. But the budget's in good shape as we continue to go forward. So we looked at, one of the things that we looked at is always an issue is our station coverage. I talked last year when we were talking about trying to hire or put the extra overtime money in the budget so we could maintain coverage. And we're still maintaining 72% of the time that we've tried to cover the station, 1,700 times since July 1st that we've covered the station. 72% of the time we've been able to get all the coverage we asked for. That's no small testament to the effort of the men and women that work there. They're working extra shifts because people are out, and they're still getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning to come in and cover the firehouse. That's a real testament to the caliber of people that work there. We see that shifting. Just the nature of the business, departments around us are not coming back for overtime as much as they used to. People's lifestyles are different, families are different, so we see that shifting. We're not talking about adding staff in the near future, but we will be at some point talking about adding more staff to eventually shift to a department that can handle everything with the on-duty personnel, and overtime is only for shift coverage. I don't anticipate that being in the next couple of years, but it's going to be part of the conversation going forward. And And then the last part is capital this year. I know that we're just talking about operating budget, but we do have two big-ticket items on capital. One, trying to replace an engine that got moved up a couple of years ago because the build time is 3 years. So even if we order it July 1st, we're not going to see it for 3 more years. And the cost is astronomical, and it's $1.3 million. We bought the Quint, the ladder truck, for 1.1 2 years ago. So the prices are outstanding. And then probably the biggest impact that we saw was when we ordered the ambulance this last July. We were told it was a 3-year build time for what's normally a 10-month purchase. So anticipating where our ambulances are going to be going forward, we asked for 2 on this town meeting so that when we get to the point where we get that 1, we have 2 coming in right behind it, because they'll be up over 200,000 miles on probably the majority of the fleet, and they're going to get tired. We're having issues now. I can speak to Link's credit. Kyle does a phenomenal job. They do an amazing job of keeping our fleet running, but there's only so much they can do. So that's kind of pretty much a summary. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, but we don't really have a lot more. It's kind of a simple budget for us this year. We tried not to ask for anything crazy, other than capital.
Well, thank you, and I'll turn it over to the board. Julie, why don't you?
I don't have any questions. I know that it's important for you to remind the public of how long it takes you to get your equipment and why you had to, go with the capital route you did this year. So I don't really have any questions. You've been telling us this. You've kept us well informed over the years. I feel for you in terms of the administrative person, because Sue is, it's just as, Chief Considine said, these are people who are gluing everything together on a daily basis. So I appreciate losing that staff. It's going to be difficult.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is important for you to tell the story, because the public needs to understand that you're dealing with twin problems. We're at, about 14,400 year-round population, so we've had a pretty big trajectory, especially East Harwich, over the years, number one. And despite what was said about demographics, the trajectory of older citizens has been getting much bigger. And I'm not even sure that I accept the last figure, because it seems like from the county that you're looking at over 60, at least 50% of the population. So that comes with it, health problems, and then there's the traffic. And whatever we say for the purposes of our seasonal liquor licenses, it's more like 45,000 people that are rolling in here in the summertime. And then we also have Fontaine, which was a new job opportunity, if you will, for you folks. So with all of that, it's a difficult thing to operate, and we have an outstanding fire department, and everybody understands our public safety. Both sides of that building are just terrific people. So I'm also pleased that you're trying to make do with what you got, but I get the idea about the lag time for building things. It's getting really ridiculous, and doesn't necessarily always wind up being the price that you thought, even within 6 or 12 months. So my hat's off to you for all of what you guys do.
Pete?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Chief, Deputy Chief, thanks for being here tonight. I know this is really talking about FY26, but I wanted to touch on what you brought up, Chief, as far as bringing on some people in this fiscal year to get them prepared for next fiscal year with the departures that are forthcoming. Understanding, I think your number was 63% of the budget at the 60% mark, so pretty damn close, but a hair over. How are you going to manage that? I assume the new people coming on are going to be through salary and wage line.
So there's a couple of things that we can bring to bear. Salary and wages a little bit. So one of the things we did with one of the long-term vacancies, we hired a provisional in this year already. That position potentially could turn into a full-time employee, depending on how the person works out. So it's kind of like a great road test for us. But the advantage is that it takes some pressure off the overtime budget as well, because it's a full-time body that's in a seat. And what I think we've seen is, as we trend forward, is while we've used a lot of the budget to this point, people have also used a lot of their time. So some of the leave pressure comes off the overtime budget, and that money will be available to us. So it's something we're gonna have to manage pretty carefully, but we think we can make it work. And what it does is it potentially takes a lot of pressure off next year's budget, because we can remove, if we hire the people in this year, we can potentially remove some of the operating expense for hiring new personnel off of next year's budget. We can't change the overtime, because there's overtime money to send them to the fire academy, and that would have to still be in next year. But there should be enough to make it work, and obviously we'll have to look at it really closely and see what we can do. The other issue we're gonna run into is we are most likely gonna hire people that do not have the minimum qualifications we usually require. So we usually look for somebody that has their EMT and paramedic, and then firefighter 1-2 training. So we can at least use them until we can send them to the fire academy. The reality is the job market out there right now, there are not a lot of people with a firefighter 1-2. So we're gonna hire people that we have to do that training in-house, which extends that training period out from 2 weeks, which is what it normally is, to probably a month, maybe 5 weeks. So we have to look at it and see what we can do. If we can hire them, we will, just because it makes next year look better.
Sure. No, and I appreciate the approach. I just know
Yeah,
you
no,
probably have to.
obviously, if we don't have the money, we're not gonna do it, and we're certainly not gonna do it and come back and be like, hey, we ran out of money, because I wouldn't do that. But if it looks like we can make it work within the budget we have, we'll make it work.
Good approach. Also, realizing it hasn't been that long, but have you heard any updates from other departments regarding, apparatus?
It's getting worse, not better.
Yeah.
It's well, we did get good news. The ambulance vendor that we deal with, he said that the company made some changes that went into effect January that should shorten the lead time from 3 years to 2. Probably won't affect our truck that was ordered in July, but would affect these 2 trucks ordered this year. So that's a bonus. And actually, Mark Keller sent me a great article today. So there's a whole bunch of things that are behind this, but a lot of it is, there was a ton of money during COVID that fire departments used to buy trucks. And then there was a reduction of parts and supplies available. So there's this huge backlog, and we're still living in that bubble of this backlog that they're trying to get through. The problem is, a lot of the manufacturers don't want to upstaff to overcome the backlog, because they know it's going to pop. And they know that down the road, they don't want to have to lay people off after they hire them to get through it. So I think we'll be okay. I think it's a little bit of a moving target, and hopefully that 3 years for the engine drops down to 2 years or 18 months or something like that. We'll obviously do whatever we can to make it work, but.
Okay, great. And 66 is back in service, no issues?
It is back in service. Went back in service Thursday. It's working great so far. Everybody's been out retraining on it, getting familiar with it. So we're in good shape, and the bricks were delivered today for the front of the building, so we should be in good shape there too.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Michael?
I have no question. Chief and Deputy Chief, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Mike.
Anyone from the public?
Hi, Mark Kelleher, West Harwich. I had 3 questions. I'll ask them, maybe you can just, in '23, you were running about close to 5,000 runs. How's your trend going, looking forward, just to anticipate future needs? On Fontaine, the chief sent me some information last year about 413 runs out of Fontaine. About 27% were Harwich. Didn't include second-time homeowners. So probably 50% are Harwich, but that still means a fair amount of ambulance runs are being done for people other than Harwich. I just bring that up. 16%, I think the chief had told me, was going to Chatham. Something to think about in negotiations with Chatham. We're doing a lot of ambulance hauling. And the last thing is a question about ambulance reimbursements. How much do you get from Medicare? And with all that's going on budget-wise, have you thought about or anticipated any reductions possibly in your reimbursements from Medicare? So, thank you.
I can answer one of those 3 questions off the top of my head. As far as our trend of runs, we typically trend up. We were in 2018, 2018, We hit 5,000 runs, and then we plateaued down to about 4,800. Early 2020, we were on pace in January to, we were 100-something runs ahead in January, so we were on a pace to eclipse 5,000 runs, and then COVID happened, and as busy as everybody became medically down here, people stopped calling the fire department. They didn't call us for medical calls, they didn't call us because their house was on fire, they didn't want anybody that wasn't their family in their house. So we saw a huge drop in runs. We built back up to that. We were above 5,000 runs this year, just barely. The trend is always up a little bit. It's not, it used to be, 5, 6, 7% a year. It's kind of leveled off. I would expect we're not going to get significantly busier than we are, but we're going to stay steady at what we are. The negotiations with Chatham over Fontaine that's not even my department. I can't even, that's not something I would have any expertise on, so I'm not going to weigh in on it. The Medicare thing, we'll certainly look into that. I don't know that we're going to see any change in ambulance billing. There was a big feature story on the news not that long ago about ambulance billing and fairness in it and everything else, but I don't think that you're going to see any significant change in what's covered for that. But we'll find out. Certainly ask.
Excellent. Don?
Just, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one comment about this, because I don't want anybody leaving the room misunderstanding. As I understood it, there's no direct correlation between either Medicare or insurance reimbursements in your budget. I mean, you don't get that money. Correct. The town's general treasury receipts the general fund gets that money. So everybody understands it's not like you're getting rich off of calls because you get money from insurance.
So understanding we don't live in a vacuum. The one thing that we have always said and went in place when this ambulance billing first started was that the fire department is not dependent, our budget is not dependent on it, and while I understand it goes to the greater good of the town's operating budget, it's not ever a deciding factor in whether we will transport somebody or what our level of service will be maintained at. And I appreciate that fact, because we're not worried about whether there's a significant reduction in ambulance receipts as to whether or not we can put the ambulance on the road.
But the headline that I was driving at for the public is it's not a revolving fund, and you do not put effort out and get money back from the insurance companies. It doesn't work that way.
Correct.
Anything else from the board? Thank you both for being here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your
Thank you
time.
for all you do. Next on the agenda, committee presentations, the Voter Information Committee. Tricia Murray, come on up. Good evening.
I'm Tricia Murray. I'm the chair of the Voter Information Committee. I'm joined this evening by our vice chair, Amy Jalbert, and our newest member, Pauline Tees. Joy Jordan is our secretary, and Emily Milan rejoined us this year. We are very happy to say. I did submit our annual report. It's been a long night, but I'm happy to give you a brief overview if you're interested, or I can just answer questions.
I think a brief overview would be nice. Thank you.
Okay. The Voter Information Committee's charge is to inform and prepare voters on issues to be addressed at annual and special town meetings and the local annual election, and to encourage voter registration and participation. So, some of the 2024 committee highlights demonstrating our mission include we staffed a table at annual town meeting, both nights of annual town meeting, to promote committee vacancies. We partnered with the League of Women Voters to offer a candidates forum for one of the contested town elections. There were 2 contested town elections, but we were unable to coordinate with the candidates for the school committee. So they did not participate. And then our last, one of our last 2024 highlights was that we promoted the town clerk's programming around election security. For 2025, we're continuing to work to promote voter participation. We are taking on-camera interviews of committee chairs with vacancies, and to date, we've interviewed 8 committees, which those interviews are using 6 designated questions, which the committee chairs are provided ahead of time, and gives those committee chairs an opportunity to explain about their committees and what's required to join them. We would like to thank Jamie Goodwin and her staff at the Harwich Channel, Town Clerk Emily Mitchell and her staff, and Caroline Carey and her staff at the Community Center for their assistance with facilitating the committee's programming. We'd like to thank Michael McCaskill for serving as our liaison to the Select Board. And lastly, we'd like to invite the public to join our meetings. We meet the third Wednesday of each month at 4:30 at the Channel 18 studio.
Well, thank you very much. Good presentation, and thanks for what we have in the packet. I'll go to the board. Pete, any questions?
No, thank you for your time. No questions. I appreciate the presentation and the material, and I'm glad to hear that you folks are running with a 5-member team. So hopefully we can continue to keep that.
We're happy about that as well.
There. So yes, thank you.
Don.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. It's the same comment. I'm glad that you're up. You perform an important function, and for a while there, it was getting nip and tuck with how many people you had. So I appreciate everything you're doing.
Julie?
Same, I will echo both Pete and Don's comments, and thank you for your report. Thank you for all the work you've been putting in. It's great to have a full committee, and glad to hear Emily rejoined as well, so thank you. And thank you for your patience tonight.
Michael?
Just echo the same comments. Great job, great report, and thank you very much.
And I have nothing to add. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you. And if any other committees haven't been interviewed yet, but would like to be interviewed, just be in touch with us. We're happy to take you.
Thank you, and thank you for the other 2 members who came tonight as well.
Thank you.
Next on, we're going to skip down to new business B. Vote to approve a temporary closure from February 2nd, 2025 to March 14th, 2025 for BLM Restaurant Group, Inc., DBA The Lanyard, 429 Route 28. I'll just open and steer this direction here. So we do have a letter in our packet. The applicants made an error, and they did not notify us prior to closing. These are...
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Matt Kelly. I'm one of the owners of the Lanyard, or BLM Restaurant Group. This is Lou Malzone.
Gentlemen, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I think my letter speaks for itself a little bit. It's a mea culpa letter. We have closed in the past. The change in the ownership group, a lot going on. It was an oversight. Certainly was not intentional. Hate to come and ask for forgiveness, but that's essentially what we're doing. And that was never our intention. It would never be our intention. The goal going forward is to turn the screws. We're doing a lot of great things that we'll probably be back to see you in course when it's appropriate. But plan is to be open in a couple of weeks and never have something like this happen again. So happy to answer any questions that you have.
Well, thank you. We'll start with Michael.
Sorry, I'm struggling with my mute button again. I would just say that I appreciate the 2 of you being there tonight. I appreciate the paperwork and the apology, and mistakes do happen. It's just refreshing to see the establishment come in and offer their apology in person. So I appreciate that, and mistakes do happen. Hopefully you've learned from it. It won't happen again.
Thank you.
Julie?
No, I feel the same, and thank you for being here to explain.
Don?
Appreciate it.
Nope, same way.
Pete?
Nope, thank you again. Yeah, appreciate coming in and discussing with us in person.
Thank you.
I feel the same, so I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I vote to approve a temporary closure from February 2, 2025 to March 14, 2025 for the BLM Restaurant Group, DBA The Lanyard, 429 Route 28, for the purpose of paint, redecorating, floors, and some cosmetic work.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Pete?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
I'm an aye, 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you both for being here. It does mean a lot. Goes a long way. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask on behalf of an employee, if you would take old business B out of order? We have Amy Usowski, our conservation agent, patiently waiting remotely, and if the board would consider taking that next.
I'd be happy to do that. Board? Yeah, okay. So this is a discussion to, I believe, close the circle on the Walder Road stairs question that came before us several months ago. We have, let me just get to it. We have our legal opinion, we have conservation's opinion, and now I'll open it up to the board for questions and discussion. Don, you want to begin?
Nope.
Okay, Pete?
Well, clearly we got their opinion. As I said then, and I'll say now, I disagree with both of their opinions, but it is what it is.
Michael?
I'd echo Pete's comments. I disagree with both opinions. And, one thing that we never did get to was the cost of replacement to the department and where that money would come from.
Julie?
So I don't disagree with the attorney's opinion. I also would say that based on the feedback we got originally from Matt Sutpen, who's here tonight, I thought that he was saying he was in favor of it because he had the history of it. But my understanding now is that can you just go up to the podium? I just have a question. Were the stairs attached to the cabana?
They were. I lived next door, and as I mentioned earlier, my family owned the Jenkins property at one time, sold it to the Jenkins in 1950. 1957, I came to live with my grandmother next door, and in order to get away, I dug a hole underneath the foxhole underneath the Jenkins cabana. And so I know it very well. And the Jenkins cabana had the stairs, a couple of landings down, fixed stairs that went down. And Mr. Jenkins was not going to walk in the sand from A to B to use some stairs. I imagine I could find a photograph somewhere if I went and called on my cousins, but I don't have one. Anyway, at one time, I know anecdotally that Bert Barker wanted to get a hold of the cabana because the deal was that it had to be removed. And he got my stepfather to figure out how to get it down to his house. And my stepfather figured it out, putting it on skids. But then they also figured out that it couldn't get into the backyard. It was too big. So they never moved it. And the fire department was charged with burning it down, or got the opportunity for a fire drill to burn it down. However, somebody made the executive decision not to take the stairs away or not to burn the stairs. And that brings us to where we are at the moment. And all I can say is what I said in my letter to Josephine Jenkins' great credit. She wants to contribute to the last, probably wilderness on the shore of Nantucket Sound. And why don't we let her? You know, I will point out that in 2011, and Don may remember it, you may remember it, Peter, I wrote a letter to your board because Davis Lane was getting bought up by newcomers. And they all had, I guess, what you'd call a hyper-private mentality. They all wanted to make sure nobody was using the beach in front of their house. Historically, those of us who were in the neighborhood going back had no issue with people walking from Bank Street, walking from wherever. However, the new purchasers wanted to wall off their turf, as it were. And they did, splitting up, had the beach surveyed between Snow Inn and Bank Street, and divided the frontage equally, and they all had their plats and their properties located. And then somehow they got to the board, and all of a sudden there's this sign that says, "Forbidden to walk down to the beach from the end of Bayview Road." There's the sign. And instructions, this was a town sign, incidentally, instructions to walk down Davis Lane to the Merkle Beach and access Nantucket Sound via the Merkle Beach. I saw that, and I thought, well, that's just not right. And I knew it not to be right, and I asked for you to think of the Walther Road property with Josephine Jenkins' intention, her money, her gift, accepted by this town, and Bayview Road, where Francis and Edie Van Buren and their kids lived right next to the pathway down to the water, had given to the town a 6-foot right-of-way, 6 feet, so that everybody on Bayview Road or anywhere could go down to the beach. Well, the town ignored that, and eventually the town became aware that they shouldn't just wipe Francis Van Buren off the map. He gave the town a gift, and thank you, you honor that gift. You took down the old sign, and you basically put a new sign up that said, stay on the 6 feet and go to the water. So you have precedent for having honored somebody who gifted the town. I ask you to stick to it, to continue to honor somebody who gave a gift to the town. And it's very clear, all she wanted was a bike rack and open space to be enjoyed by the town, not what I guess you could assume, equate to as, basically a public-private relationship between the people on Walther Road who don't enjoy frontage, beach frontage, and the town. And it just seems, if you're ready to make a revisionist change like that, we can't count on anything. Somebody's going to change it for you. I ask you to honor the intention. Seems right. You'd expect it of your own gift. I'd expect it of my own gift. I expect you to expect it of Francis Van Buren's, which you have, and Josephine Jenkins' gift. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. I just have
Oh,
one-
sorry, Julie.
No, that's all right,
Sorry.
because then I also just want to point out that Conservation Commission voted, which is a regulatory board, not to put the stairs back. And the only thing I had said when we originally talked about this was if this board was talking about putting stairs back, then we need to be mindful of, A, conservation, and also those stairs would have to be removable or some way to protect that bank, because their charge is to protect the bank. And to Matt's point, our charge is to protect the property that was gifted to the town. So I feel like council has made the right determination, and so I'll stop there.
Don?
Thank you.
I have nothing to add to it.
Okay. Michael? I'm sorry, anyone from the public, and then we'll go to Amy. Hi, Amy.
Mr. Chairman.
Hi, Richard.
How are you? Good evening. Richard Waystack of Harwich. I don't know if you've taken a look down to see the area of Walther Road Beach and Neal Road Beach lately. The next property over is having a huge seawall put in. And currently, right now, you'll see the overage of the sand on Walther Road Beach and Neal Road Beach. And those stairs have been replaced since the cabana was taken away. I just urge you to be very, very careful, because the liability that the town will face without having stairs there, people are going to use that walkway, as Mr. Sutphin mentioned. They're going to use that walkway to get onto the beach. There is a drop-off. Someone's going to get hurt. There is inherent liability for the town if nothing is done there. So I would be careful. I disagree with both council, and after seeing the project that's being done on the next property, the Wiseman property, the new seawall that's being put in there, I don't see why a small set of stairs could not be put there. I'd urge you to take a look at what's happening right now on those beaches before you make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Amy? How are you tonight?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm well. How are you all?
Great, thank you.
Thanks for taking me a little bit out of order here to get get this. The Conservation Commission did consider the Board of Selectmen's opinion and also council's opinion, legal opinion on the stairs, and at a public meeting did decide to opine or to agree with council based on the language of the deed. Only reviewed it based on the language of the deed, not on its wetlands merits, because that would have to come in front of the Conservation Commission as a formal filing had the commission and the town decided to pursue reconstructing stairs there. But I want folks to know that that's not, we're not trying to disregard the property there. As Richard pointed out, that there's activity happening nearby, and about a week or two ago, I did go down to the property because there was some concern about the condition of the beach at the end of Neil Road and the stockpiling of material that was occurring on the town property, beachfront of Walther Road, and did have a conversation with the contractor for 19 Walther Road who was rebuilding the seawall. There was some material on the beach in order to stage equipment. Just wanted to let you all know this. That material is gone now. That material was really for just a base for the equipment and has been removed from the beach since. Suitable material, albeit a little bit darker because it's been underground, underneath the old stones, has been placed on 23 Walther Road, the town property, where we've had that severe erosion. That is material that was from that property, gifted to the town and accepted by the Conservation Commission at a meeting. So they're trying to fill that gap in where there's been the most erosion. They've also voted to accept compatible material from 29 Walther Road, where they're rebuilding a house. So we don't want to neglect this property in any way. It is a huge asset to the town, and we have received some material to be put on that property. But in the future, now that if this closes the matter of whether the town will be considering applying for stairs, then the Conservation Commission will discuss how to appropriate signage, symbolic fencing to decrease town liability down that banking, and we'd be happy to have a conversation with you as well.
Thank you, Amy. Anything else from the board?
The only thing I'll say, Mr. Chair, and I'm not going to continue to labor this point, the council's own opinion, as I brought up back when we first read this opinion, paragraph 2 states that, in my opinion, although the deed could be construed to permit stairs, so could be construed to permit stairs, her better interpretation is that it doesn't. But again, arbitrary decision by council, but it clearly could be interpreted to permit stairs. So with all due respect to Matt, I'm not convinced that the deed clearly states stairs couldn't be there, my interpretation.
Thank you, Pete. And I'll add that there's other factors. Cost of the new stairs, regulatory with Amy and Concom, we'd have to go before them to get their opinion on that. I don't think tonight I'm ready to make a decision on this. That's me. If someone wanted to put a motion on the table, certainly we could entertain that, but I think I'd like to take Amy up on her offer to speak with her a little bit more, and then maybe we can bring this back.
No problem with me.
Don?
Fine with me.
No problem.
Okay, great. Thank you, Amy, for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Old business A, preliminary discussion on next steps for the agreement with Davenport Realty for 62 Route 28. Votes may be taken. Don, you had asked for this to be on, so I'm going to let you lead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. going to start just really quickly on the metamorphosis of all of this stuff. We had a town meeting, and I'm probably going to be glossing over stuff because this is the Cliff Notes version of it, but still, we had a town meeting which pondered what the DCPC for the area was. And there were several enunciated purposes in that. I was involved with the folks who wanted to set it up, and it was always based on economic development and saving the historic character of that entire swath. We went in front of town meeting. There was permission granted for us to enter into an agreement, but it was extremely complicated. Just to make this really clear, we have no agreement with the church. Our agreement is a successor agreement. We're going to own it. As it was contemplated, we would own it for about a half hour while we were trading papers at the Registry of Deeds. The real purchase and sale agreement with Davenport is with the church, and subsequently we were going to help with lot lines in order to be able to create frontage and size of lot to be able to do certain things on the lot. I myself voted for it, just to say that up front. But pondering what the purpose of eminent domain is, which is a public purpose has to be enunciated. We are no longer in the realm of affordable housing, and we never actually were there because we never actually promised that, although the original RFP came out with that. It was a mistake. We should have never been there. That wasn't what we were trying to do. But we were trying to save the building, at least the facade of the building or the envelope of the building. At this point in time, when we're talking about the person who wants something from us to create, which would be exercising our eminent domain authority, and I get that the Supreme Court has diluted that to actually count for shopping centers based on Connecticut and their ruling, I'm out. I mean, I cannot see a public purpose if you're going to create a hole in the ground. That whole thing is a ruse at this point because you're not preserving anything. We are giving a real estate opportunity to somebody by expunging the lot lines to create a clean sheet of paper, if you will. Having said that, I understood that Mr. Carey had an interest in it. It's not with us. It can't be with us because it's the church that has an agreement. I'm not sure whether it can be abrogated or not. I had asked legal counsel, and I've stick by it because I was basically on the wrong end of the pet burial ground originally, but I was the first one to start objecting to it. I see nothing different about this. You have to be willing to change your mind when the circumstances develop. I know it's inconsistent with what I originally said, but I am totally out on this. I would oppose anything that allows that building to be leveled because I think that the engineering report, let's be like, give you the G-rated version, is nonsense. It was clearly not thought out well. I love Duncan's picture of a Lego front of a building. You can't recreate history. We're either saving it or we're not saving it. And I say at this point, we're not saving it, and I'd love the board to take the opportunity to get an off-ramp on this legally, see what it would take to unpack this whole thing with Davenport, because again, the agreement is not with the church. And they could still file for the demolition, but I would oppose that myself. I mean, and I think that all the citizens in this town have the right to oppose that because it's essentially creating Epcot if you wind up doing this, because it's a nice recreation of what used to be, but it isn't what used to be anymore. So having said that, that's why I asked for this thing to come in. I had an epiphany, if you will, that this was just, we had gone as far as we could possibly go with this thing legally, and I'm off the wagon here. I'll oppose this in the future if we can't get to a vote.
All right, so you stated your position clearly. I'll go to the rest of the board. Pete?
It sounded as if Don has interest in bringing counsel into this conversation. I have no problem with that.
Okay, Michael?
Yeah, I'm not even sure what I could say because a lot of this was done in an executive session. What I can say is we have a legal binding document with Davenport Company, and I've said it from the beginning. we don't own this building. We were taking it not for a public purpose, but for many public purposes. And we were getting involved in this, as said, for multiple public purposes. And Don is correct. We did not discuss affordable housing because that was rejected by the Davenport Company from the beginning. And the terms workforce housing and rents being based on the square footage of the units that were made. So, you know, if the legal team can you know, figure out a way out of this with no cost to the town, then if folks want to save this, then great. But, you know, hopefully everyone understands that we're years away from a new deal. And without the public purpose, as Don just said, it'll be interesting to see who actually steps up and if they do it without the town's help. Because this building was for sale for years with no interest until somebody got it and got wind that it might be torn down. And in my understanding is they've already been for a demo permit. They can demo it anyway. We weren't part of that. So the conversation's changed. Interesting how it's changed because several members, people that Don just spoke of, Don himself, we talked at town meeting about preserving historic facade. We did not talk about preserving the building, and it was always an option through conversations that we had that it might be torn down. So the public outcry, great. It's nice to see people step up now, and I will follow the direction of town council and what the liability to the town will be, because we as a board voted, not unanimously, but we as a board voted to enter into this agreement. So I'll wait to see what legal has to say.
Thank you, Michael. Julie?
I'm happy to have legal get involved. As you know, I'm the one who voted against it. I'm the one who said that it was a non-responsive bid to the RFP, and I stand by that. So I would like to certainly bring it back for discussion.
Thank you, Julie. And if anybody from the public would like to speak, now would be your opportunity.
Duncan Berry, West Harwich. I would just invite everybody to consider the reality that the town voted to preserve the building. The legal counsel added a public use to facilitate the taking. When the preservation and the public use are in conflict, the addition of the public use is nullified. The preservation is what was contracted for. So the public use was actually the preservation. And I can't imagine that we have to explain that to an attorney who is versed in civic matters and municipal matters, that this is actually something of intrinsic, inestimable value. So whether it adds to a shy list entry on a spreadsheet or not is irrelevant. The skyline, the tone, the tenor, the quality of life in the town would be just destroyed by removing this. So, you know, to me, this is a very simple, clear thing. You cannot have two mutually exclusive things, one of which the public voted for, and then one which was added on later. If they're self-negating, it scotches the whole thing. So.
Thank you, Duncan. Anybody else?
Yeah, my ask is for it to be put on the agenda. I agree with Michael. I'd like to know what our exposure is, but I don't really think our exposure is that great at this point because we were trading eminent domain for joining lots that nobody can prove whether they do or don't belong to the primary lot. And the only people that we really should be talking to is legal counsel to see how we can unpack and unwind this thing. I'm not trying to do anything to hurt the town, but I think allowing this to go much further would hurt the town.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair.
Michael, please.
Just for the record, to a previous speaker and not Select Board Member Howell, Duncan Berry was very involved in the conversations of this for the past year, even to the point where we spoke and he met with Davenport companies to measure molding and look at windows and talk about where they could be sent to have them preserved, put back in. And even in conversations with him, he recognized that it might not be able to be saved. Now I will give it to him that it might be able to be saved, as other people have said. But for the record, this conversation went on for a year, and the previous speaker was involved in that. And the public purpose, again, what we talked about was preserving and if I need to go back to meetings to point it out, the facade of the building. So for the paper's purposes and for the public's purposes, it's not that simple.
Thank you, Michael. Duncan?
I would just say my conversations with with Davenport had to do with the preservation and restoration to a status quo ante when the removal of the cladding and the sheathing that was put on prior to probably 1990. So the desire was to move something backward in time with the intact fabric of the surface. You can't demolish something and then say that it qualifies for preservation. Just, again, this is not a matter of something that's complicated. It's not complicated. This is as simple as A does not equal not A. You can't have something new that is going to then have a historic preservation thing put on it. That's not how it works. You know, it's like Don's example of Epcot. Like if we decided to put up a brand new version of the church, you wouldn't call it the West Harwich Baptist Church. It was like, you know, what they did in Williamsburg, or, you know, it's just, this is not the same thing. The other point I would argue is that, very simply, the reason why I went into those discussions with them was because of the plausibility of a demolition was revealed only when, you know, you look at the interior. The photographs of the interior, or if you actually walked in and take a look at it, I argue, and I would argue that any sensible structural engineer would say the same thing, that these thin pressed tin panels collapsing off of from the weight of rain from trusses does not represent a structural damage to the building that, you know, would cause or trigger the need for demolition. This is an interior shell. This is not an interior structural problem. So my interest was, and my discussions were, in good faith, that there was a damage. I'm with, you know, anybody who read those engineer reports didn't go into the building. There's no structural analysis of anything. And I would argue again, every time we go into something where structural analysis or engineering reports are required in this town, for every town, you know, owner of a home, for your runoff calculations, none of that kind of analysis had anything to do with this. This is simply empirical kind of, well, I'm going to say that I think that this is not going to stand. That is just not, it is absolutely anti-scientific. So, just to be clear on that.
Thank you, Duncan. Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I approach you and give you some paperwork?
Sure, please.
This has nothing to do with the church. That's what I should have given earlier. There you go.
Okay, thank you very much. So is,
Oh, I do want to speak.
is
about
it
the
on
church.
the church?
I do want to speak about the church.
I haven't read it yet,
No,
so.
that's what I
Main
should have
Street
given.
Bog? Okay.
Yeah, that's all.
Quickly on the church, if you don't mind.
Quickly, okay. I think we all know, or most of us should know, that listening to Paul Doan at the Historic Commission meeting a week or so ago, that he approached DeWitt Davenport about gaining entry to the church so that an engineer could go in and assess the church, either for the benefit of Davenport or for the benefit of those of us who would like to see it stand. And apparently, DeWitt Davenport does not want anybody to go into the church and will not give permission for anybody to go into the church to establish the structural viability of the church. Clearly, that speaks to a guy who just wants to tear something down. If this is what he's tearing down, there'll be something else that he'll tear down. He'll just tie up the P&S, and I don't think in conscience people who manage the town would let somebody push the town around that way. I'm glad to think that you will go to the end of the road with your attorneys and find a way to solve what is, from my standpoint, an extremely selfish posture on the part of Davenport. Thank you.
Thank you. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to that point, we have a representative from the church here, do we? The question I have is, have papers passed between you and Mr. Davenport?
You have to go to the mic, please, Mr. Cobb. Thank you. And state your name, if you don't mind, when you get there.
Yes, my name is Jonathan Cobb. I'm the pastor of First Baptist Church of West Harwich. That's the official name. So, yes, that we are under contract, but I want to limit what I say so I don't incur any legal ramifications. But I think I can speak for people in the neighborhood of which I'm a member. I'm a neighbor, and I think it would be in the town's best interest to preserve the present building with the clock tower, the stained glass windows, and the edifice. The ceiling did collapse a few years ago, but as was said by Duncan, the leak in the roof is what caused that, and then saturation of all that insulation, and just brought it down, which I'm glad no one was injured in that.
And I appreciate the update and all of that, but I had just that one fundamental question. You had a purchase and sale agreement. It has been executed, but it has not actually been consummated as a sale at the Registry of Deeds, correct? So the title is still with the church.
I have attorney Michael Princey as my attorney.
Having heard what you just heard tonight, I'm just wondering where Mr. Davenport comes off denying access to something that he doesn't own.
Yes, I have the key to that building, and I have access to that, and we still own that building. So if someone wanted access, they can come directly to me, and I'll work with the town and whatever needs to be done.
And I certainly appreciate that. I think you understand where we're at right now. If you could get this on an agenda with some legal counsel. But I also would like to know an analysis of this, where Mr. Davenport comes off not allowing anybody to look into something that's germane to his request, since he doesn't own it.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Yeah. Well, the temperature of the board is clearly to get legal counsel involved. That's what I will do. I will start that process tomorrow, as soon as tomorrow, and we will get it on an agenda forthwith.
Thanks.
Thank you all. Town Administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First is a contract. This is related to the boat engine for the Harbor Master primary boat, primary patrol boat. As you may have known, in the last year, one of the two engines failed and had to be replaced. The second engine was expected to be replaced during fiscal year '26 in the capital plan. However, man plans, God laughs. So that engine failed. That engine has been replaced. So there was a contract procured through Mass General Laws, Chapter 30B, for proposals for the process of obtaining quotes for the removal and installation of a new outboard motor. Allen Harbor Marine Service was the lowest bidder in that regard. So there is a contract that I executed for the purchase of a replacement outboard engine in the amount of $18,710. And again, this was on the capital plan for fiscal year '26, so I'll be making updates to that because the purchase occurred in fiscal year '25, and funds that were still available in the operating budget for the Harbor Master. So we now have two new engines, replacement engines for the Harbor Master's patrol boat. Secondly, you'll be getting more information, but the land of low value auction through attorney David Coppola, assisting, I believe is scheduled for Thursday, March 11th. I believe that's the right date, but I'll confirm that and I'll send up more information. And we'll have more information at your meeting on the 24th. Speaking of your meeting on the 24th, just a reminder, Mr. Chair, as you know, you have invited through administration the individuals that have presented 9 citizen petition articles. If memory serves correct, that's 6 individuals covering 9 petitioned articles, the language of which has been shared with council, as you've done in years past. Council will provide some legal interpretation of what they believe the net effect of each petitioned article would be. And again, as you know, because they're been validated by the town clerk's office, they will be included in the warrant, but you will still have that discussion. And Mr. Chair, as you know, you'll have presentations by the petitioners themselves to give information to the board and everybody on the articles. Secondly, you'll have next week the draft warrant to date, including the 9 petitioned articles that I mentioned. The draft warrant right now stands at 59 articles. That includes 10 articles for community preservation, which have not been drafted yet, but the vast majority of all the other articles have been drafted, have been shared with council, so that'll be up for discussion by you all next week at your meeting. And lastly on that, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as you know, you have until the 4th Tuesday, which is next Tuesday, to transmit to the Finance Committee the fiscal year 2026 budget. And as you know, under the charter, you get to do that with or without amendment. So if there needs to be an action or a vote, we can handle that in your agenda. However, the FinCom has given notice that their public hearing on the budget will occur next Thursday, February 27th. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Joe. Select Board member report. Pete?
Just real quickly, and I appreciate your communication today regarding the debt schedule. And I saw the town administrator's response, so I'm hoping we could include the Q2 24 and Q2 25 update as well in that discussion.
Q2 24 to 25 year-to-date comparisons?
Yeah. And then hopefully that can be duplicated or replicated for Q3 as it's quickly approaching. Thank you.
Yep. If I may, to that end, I have tomorrow is my weekly meeting with the interim finance director. So we have these topics and others on the agenda, so hopefully you'll have more information tomorrow.
Perfect.
Julie?
I have nothing.
Michael?
I have nothing.
You have less now. I have nothing.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Have to vote on
I was,
You have no one online, so you don't have to do a roll call.
oh, he's gone. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0.